Hi, it's Katrina. What if human history isn't a straight line, but a massive cycle where advanced civilizations rise to power only to be completely wiped off the map? Thanks to modern tech like satellite imaging and LiDAR, we are finally uncovering the forgotten epoch, a hidden network of sophisticated megacities resting just a few feet beneath the ground you are walking on right now. In this ultimate compilation, we are diving deep into these lost civilizations, so grab some coffee or some tea, get comfy, and let's go.
Tamoanchan. In ancient Mesoamerica, civilizations had a slightly different version of heaven than their Christian counterparts in Europe. For many groups living throughout Mexico, including the Aztec and Maya, they believed in a place called Tamoanchan. It was both a paradise and potentially the home of a pre-flood civilization. Tamoanchan was a mythical realm that a person could reach upon their death. Not only was Tamoanchan a beautiful afterlife that people looked forward to their whole lives, but it was also the home of the gods. Mexican cultures believed that Tamoanchan was the birthplace of all humanity. This mystical place was where humans first entered the world and where their spirits went when they died. It also may have been a place in the real world where an advanced civilization thrived centuries before the Aztec or the Maya. Juan de Tovar was a Jesuit priest who wrote an exceptional chronicle on the beliefs of the Mesoamerican people. While most of the Spanish were trying to erase the ancient history, the Jesuit was trying to preserve it. In his book, the Tovar Codex, he described Tamoanchan as the Aztec version of the Garden of Eden. In Aztec mythology, getting to this place of paradise wasn't an easy feat. After a person died, they awoke in the dark and dreary underworld known as Xibalba. They had to fight through demons and restless spirits, as well as a series of supernatural worlds. And only then did they arrive at Tamoanchan. It was a whole ordeal, one that could only be completed by the most fearless of people. If Tamoanchan was a real place, where was it, and what happened to it? Researcher Alfredo Lopez Austin has suggested that Tamoanchan was in Cuernavaca or Iztactepetl, but other historians think Tamoanchan was closer to the Gulf Coast. It's believed that Tamoanchan was the original home of the Aztec. It may have been the homeland of a mighty civilization that was destroyed by an unknown cataclysmic event, most likely a flood. And now for a quick break. I wanted to give a big thank you to Hi Senpai and Creative Millionaire for supporting this channel. Thank you so much! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family, because why not? The Real Olympians. The gods of ancient Olympus may have been based on a real group of powerful people who came from an advanced society before the worldwide flood. Scholars have suggested that the goddess Athena may have actually been Noah's daughter-in-law. In a lot of ancient religions, gods are depicted as great beings with supernatural features. In Egypt, the gods are anthropomorphic. They're spliced with animals like Horus, the hawk god. And in India, the gods are incredible beings with too many arms and outrageous powers. In Greek mythology, though, the gods of Olympus are ordinary people. They do have powers, great powers, to make mortals shudder, but they look like ordinary folk. Zeus was a man who could hurl thunderbolts, and Athena was an extremely intelligent woman. Countless idols across the Mediterranean prove that the Greek gods were modeled after normal men and women over 2,500 years ago. Some historians believe this may have been because the Greek gods were real people of flesh and blood. Specifically, the gods may have been the ancient ancestors of the Greeks from a time before Greek society. Athena in particular was of great importance to the Greek people. Her name appears in the oldest written Greek known to scholars, a type of writing called Linear B. In these ancient texts, she's referred to as Athanatos, which translates to the Immortal One. According to the Bible, there was a world before the flood. It was an epic place with big cities and advanced cultures, but the cultures were sinful, which was why God wiped them out with a flood. Even if you take God out of the equation, ancient records from around the globe suggest that there was a flood that destroyed an ancient society. The people before the flood lived significantly longer than the people who came after the flood. For example, Noah, the one who built the ark, lived for 950 years. After Noah and his sons, people started living shorter lives. Whatever had made the antediluvian people live so long, it was erased with the flood that swept across the world. People like Noah and his immediate relatives who lived for so long would have been immortalized by the newly risen societies. To the men and women only living a few decades, Noah and his offspring would have seemed like immortal gods. And this is where the whole thing with the Olympians and Athena comes into play. Scholars have suggested that Athena was really Nama, the wife of Noah's son Ham. The book of Genesis claims that Nama was the daughter of Lamech, who ruled the Canaanites prior to the flood. When the flood waters receded and society began again, Athena, aka Nama, existed in society for nearly 1,000 years. It's no wonder that the Greeks saw her as a deity. They could have based all the Olympians around the long-living descendants of Noah and the pre-flood world. What do you think of this story? Let me know in the comments. The Paracas Skulls. Over 300 elongated skulls have been found in Peru's Paracas Desert. While mainstream scientists claim that the skulls are from a human society who practiced cranial deformation, not everyone agrees. The skulls may have been from a much older civilization who mixed their genes with aliens. Elongated skulls aren't unusual to find. They've been located all across the world, from South America to Egypt, but the Paracas skulls are unique. The first one was found by Julio Tello in 1928. They are larger than other elongated skulls found in different parts of the world. Scientists also say they contain unknown strands of DNA. There have been many tests done on the skulls since there are so many of them, and the tests all seem to indicate that structurally, they aren't entirely human. But first, let's dive into the mainstream theory. The accepted explanation for the strange skulls is cranial deformation. An infant's head was deformed on purpose using two pieces of wood. The child's head was basically stuck between some boards until it grew into an elongated shape. Archaeologists say this was no different than modern tattoos or piercing because it was a body modification. It was a practice that had something to do with spiritual belief or social status. And maybe that's true, but these skulls have so much more going on. For example, tests have shown that the Paracas skulls belonged to people who had red or blonde hair. This is crazy because no other people in South America were known to have had any other color of hair besides black and brown. They were totally different from everyone else. There is no definitive conclusion to the mystery. Some believe the skulls are evidence of Nephilim, the unholy abominations from the Bible created before the flood. But others think they are proof that aliens experimented with gene splicing thousands of years ago. The skulls may be evidence that extraterrestrials created a mixed race of humans and aliens. Did humans land here first? Göbekli Tepe is one of the few pieces of archaeological evidence to support an advanced civilization before the flood. That's because it's a megalithic temple that was built using sophisticated engineering techniques 6,000 years before Stonehenge. If you're into pre-flood civilizations, you've likely heard of Göbekli Tepe already. Göbekli Tepe was discovered in the 1960s, buried beneath farmland in Turkey. This site is about 6 miles from Urfa and is dated to roughly 9,500 BC. Amazingly, it's anywhere between 11,000 and 12,000 years old. But what's inside the site itself? It isn't evidence of a vast city, but rather of a society who worked together when other humans lived in caves. Archaeologists have unveiled megaliths, stone monuments, and ritual circles. There are pillars decorated in anthropomorphic gods, so the site appears to be religious in nature. It looks like a pagan temple, or like any ancient stone circle in Europe. The problem is that it's so much older. It dates to around the same time biblical scholars say the flood took place. Even in the world of mainstream science, Göbekli Tepe is hotly contested. Nobody can agree on who built it or what it was used for. When Klaus Schmidt investigated the ruins in 1963, he called Göbekli Tepe the first temple in the world. He believed it was a place of worship for groups of nomadic hunters, but others think Göbekli Tepe was the real Garden of Eden, the physical location where Adam and Eve were created by God. As of 2021, only 5% of this site had been fully excavated. A site that could prove a civilization existed before a massive flood has hardly even been explored. Then there's the bizarre twist of Karahan Tepe, a nearly identical site that was found nearby. This other site is roughly the same age, maybe even older. So how many more sites are there from 12,000 years ago that haven't been found? The Hobbits. In 2003, scientists discovered an entirely new species of human on an Indonesian island. This ancient species of human was likely part of a unique civilization tens of thousands of years ago, and some think they could still be hiding in the jungles of Asia. The discovery was made on the island of Flores, a beautiful but wild place. A series of bones were identified as belonging to a previously unknown human species. The species was named Homo floresiensis. The unique thing about them is that they were really short, only growing to a maximum of 3'7". They've been nicknamed Hobbits because they resembled hobbits from the Lord of the Rings. They were even extremely hairy, just like Tolkien's hobbits. By dating the ancient bones, scientists were able to determine that the last of the hobbits died out around 54,000 years ago. Scientists at Flinders University were able to connect the DNA of the hobbits to Homo habilis, another ancient relative of modern humans. The baffling thing is that they only appear on an island in Indonesia. So how did a whole species end up only living on the island of Flores? Did they migrate from Africa? Were there other groups of hobbits in other places whose bones haven't been found? And an even more important question is this: how many unique human species existed tens or hundreds of thousands of years ago? The Indonesian hobbits likely weren't technologically advanced. They were small and simplistic, though likely quite intelligent. Locals on the island tell tales of ape-like humanoids, which they believe could be thriving in untouched parts of the jungle. It's possible that they've even moved underground, becoming a race of deep-dwelling hominids. Pre-flood human fossils. One of the biggest questions you might be asking yourself is, if there was a civilization before the flood, where are their fossils? If there was a flood that destroyed a global civilization, it would have been an enormous flood. A flood of that magnitude would have destroyed everything living at the time. Underwater mud flows would have been powerful enough to grind human bones into powder. Anyone alive, and likely any city standing, would have been completely obliterated. So there wouldn't be any evidence left. Humans already have very low fossilization potential, and when you add catastrophic geological processes to the mix, there is an almost 0% chance of finding buried human bones. There's also an extremely low chance of finding a surviving structure from before the flood. Göbekli Tepe may have been found simply because it was on a tall hill, which before the flood may have been a mountaintop. There's another interesting point that's often overlooked. Prior to the flood, the population would have been very small. In the book of Genesis, the Bible says the earth was filled with violence. There was likely a civilization, maybe even more than one, but the populations were small, leaving even less for modern archaeologists to find and research. The Great Eridu. According to ancient Babylonian legend, Eridu was the first city that was ever established on the planet. It was built by the gods long before the flood swept away civilization. The city of Eridu belonged to Enki, the ancient Anunnaki god of wisdom and magic. The myths of Mesopotamia claim that Enki was the sole deity responsible for planet Earth. He was by himself until his brother Enlil showed up, and only then did civilization start to spread. Eridu rose in the desert south of the Euphrates River. It was a real place, confirmed by a series of sandy hills and a poorly preserved pyramid. There were 4 other major cities built by the Anunnaki prior to the flood. Ancient Sumerian texts claim that the 5 cities were ruled by 8 kings for around 800 to 1,000 years. Just like Noah and his family from the Bible, the early kings of Sumer lived insanely long. So, could they have been related? Many scholars find it strange that only in the cradle of civilization did people supposedly live for upwards of 800 years. It feels like more than a myth, especially since Eridu is still around, albeit in ruins. The oldest structures are about 5,500 years old, making researchers think that earlier traces of habitation were wiped away by the flood. The myths of the world. If you're not convinced yet of a pre-flood civilization, let me take you through the flood myths of the Old World. From Asia to South America, ancient cultures claimed that a flood destroyed their civilizations. In India, Lord Vishnu appeared to a man named Manu and warned him of a flood that was about to come. Vishnu told the human to collect all the grains of the world and store them in a boat. That way, when the flood waters receded, he could regrow the lost plants. The story is almost identical to the one from the Bible, only it's plants instead of animals. In Welsh legend, the creature Afanc caused a massive flood that left only 2 human survivors. The 2 survivors also constructed a boat just like an ark that carried 1 pair of every species of animal available. The Choctaw tribes of North America used to tell stories of the great water that rolled over the mountains and spread across the land. The epic flood destroyed everything and everyone, leaving only a few families left who had constructed a giant raft to stay safe. In Hawaii, Nu'u was the ark builder. He constructed a boat to escape an incredible deluge, and when the floodwaters receded, his boat rested on top of Mauna Kea. It's also said that Nu praised the moon for his survival. All over the world, it seems like every civilization has a myth or a story about a great flood. Is it all just coincidence? Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Cahokia, what is today nothing but mounds of green grass near St. Louis, Missouri, was once the site of the largest ever pre-Columbian settlement anywhere north of the Mexican border. It was occupied from between 800 and 1400 AD, consisting of at least 120 mounds during its peak. At the time, it was one of the greatest cities in the world, even larger than London was in the year 1250. The culture occupied much of the Mississippi Valley, and each mound had its own purpose. For example, there were mounds used for public buildings and for burials. Archaeologists even discovered an astronomical observatory built of wooden posts that they dubbed Woodhenge. Yet despite so much archaeological evidence collected by the experts, we still don't really know a lot about the ancient Mississippian civilization or what happened to them. Like many of the other pre-urban societies of North America, they vanished between 1300 and 1400, leaving no evidence behind as to why they left or where they went. The Sanxingdui aliens. The Sanxingdui ruins were discovered in 1929 in China's Sichuan province, completely by accident. The story goes, a peasant was repairing a sewage ditch when he uncovered jade and stone artifacts. But their importance wasn't really understood until 30 years later, when archaeologists uncovered 2 pits of Bronze Age treasures, including more jade figurines, 100 elephant tusks, and enormous bronze sculptures measuring 8 feet tall. The treasures were broken and buried, indicating they were destroyed as sacrifice. But who were these people? Now known as the Sanxingdui, scientists still don't know much about this mysterious ancient society. There are rumors that these statues and sculptures actually depict aliens. Of course, this is not likely the case, and Chinese archaeologists have strongly refuted any theory that the ancient culture was in contact with extraterrestrial beings. They are actually pretty offended by it. And yet scientists can't explain the bizarre figurines found both at the Sanxingdui ruins and at the less famous Erlitou site in China's Henan province. There are a lot more questions than answers, which is why conspiracy theorists are trying to fill in the blanks. Archaeologists better hurry up. These statues and masks depict humanoid beings with huge heads, pointy ears, and enlarged eyeballs. They could certainly be artistic representations of some kind of deity, perhaps a god or a family of gods. The similarity between the figurines from the 2 different archaeological sites suggests that the civilizations may have communicated with each other. What's truly interesting about the Sanxingdui ruins is that no texts of any kind have been found at the site. Some have speculated that writing could have been made on organic material like cloth or silk, meaning that all of it has decayed since the mysterious civilization vanished. We know nothing specific about their practices or what they believed in. Perhaps earthquakes and landslides are to blame for their demise. An enormous catastrophe may have cut off their water supply, forcing them to move. But the question is, where did they go? And why did they not re-emerge somewhere else? The Utopian Indis. Historians have wanted to know for a very long time how the Indus civilization flourished for 700 years without crafting a single piece of weaponry, and with no evidence of kings or queens, indicating that the society may have been run by elected officials. According to historical texts, the Indus civilization was paradise on Earth. The issue is that nobody can figure out why. The Indus civilization was one of 4 major players at the beginning of the kingdoms on Earth. Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, and ancient China were all glorified in warfare, but those who lived in the Indus Valley functioned as a utopia from between 2600 and 1900 BC, never succumbing to violence or bloodshed like the other civilizations around them. There have been at least 1,000 settlements discovered in what was once the Indus territory, a huge swath of land covering much of Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. Today, experts agree that the Indus civilization likely built the bones of what would become the Indian civilization, and they probably created Hinduism. Archaeologists know that the Indus society was quite advanced. The famous city of Mohenjo-Daro was made by skilled builders and urban planners, but there are no temples, palaces, or monuments. No obvious central seat of government. Everything was organized and clean. There was a system of seals and weights to control the exchange of goods, and they specialized in export and trade. But most impressive, perhaps, was the control over water. There were sewage systems, drainage systems, toilets, bathing areas in each house, and even small pools. One theory is that their ideology was cleanliness. There is also evidence of the city being quite wealthy, with artifacts such as ivory, lapis, carnelian, and gold beads, as well as the baked brick city structures themselves. However, the cities of the Indus Valley civilization don't show signs of fortification. Were they non-violent? Did they not have enemies? Perhaps their lack of military led to their decline. They couldn't defend themselves and were probably annihilated, though nobody has any clue who wiped them out or how it happened. The Stonehenge Builders. Stonehenge is one of the most iconic archaeological and historical sites in the world. But who really built Stonehenge? They are known as the Builders, but even though this place is perhaps one of the most studied places on Earth, there is still much we don't know about what Stonehenge really is, or the people who made it. It was definitely a burial ground and had great spiritual and religious significance. It took a lot of people a lot of effort to build this place between 3000 and 2000 BC, and some of these stones were brought from hundreds of miles away. Archaeologists are still debating what Stonehenge represents. Its alignment with the stars and the human remains indicate it had a lot to do with the dead and with astronomy, serving as a type of calendar. It also appears to have been a very important gathering place for ancient people. A popular belief is that Stonehenge was built by Druid priests, or perhaps by the wizard Merlin himself. Most recent DNA analysis shows that ancestors of the people who built Stonehenge traveled west across the Mediterranean to get to Britain. Neolithic Britons were farmers and had dark skin and blue or green eyes, and brought the tradition of building monuments using large stones. Towards the end of the Neolithic era, the farmers were replaced by another new population known as the Bell Beaker people, who migrated from inland Europe. They had lighter skin with dark eyes. Something happened, and the Neolithic cultures began to collapse. The cliff-dwelling Anasazi. The Anasazi people, or the ancestral Puebloans, are famous for their entire villages or pueblos built into cliffs. They lived in what is now the current Four Corners region of the United States, most famously Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. The name Anasazi actually comes from the Navajo Indians and loosely translates to mean enemy ancestors. This ancient Native American civilization lived in sandstone dwellings carved deep into secluded canyons. The ruins here are in abundance, with many saying that the Anasazi were one of the greatest Neolithic civilizations anywhere in America. To this day, there are still giant towers left over and huge ceremonial chambers with ceilings that weigh up to 90 tons. They could only be reached by climbing and were fortified against enemies. They created roads and irrigation systems for watering their crops and used colorful pottery, woven baskets, and sandstone to decorate their homes, greatly influencing what Southwest style means today. The Anasazi civilization lived in this area for over 1,000 years, but in a single generation, they were gone.
Between 1275 and 1300 AD, they stopped building entirely, and the land was left empty. They are often compared to the Maya in the sense that they were an advanced civilization that was prosperous, healthy, advanced in arts and science, and nobody knows why they disappeared. Scientists have no idea where they went, why they abandoned their capital, or what kind of unseen force may have played a part in their great exodus. The theory is that an extreme drought hit the desert area and they were forced to leave. Looking for the rain, it is rumored that they headed south, leaving trails of pottery and architecture along the way. The Canaanites. The Canaanite civilization is mentioned multiple times in the Bible. It is one of the most mysterious ancient societies that we know almost nothing about. That is, until recently, when new archaeological evidence revealed that the ancient Canaanites may have crafted the earliest pieces of an alphabet that we still use today. Archaeologists investigating the old Canaanite settlement of Lachish discovered a pottery shard dating back 3,500 years, inscribed with what they say is the oldest text anywhere in Israel, written using an alphabetic script. Earlier texts have been found from the Canaanite civilization, but they were written using hieroglyphics or other outdated methods. What this discovery has done is fill a gap in the earliest history of the written word. From what scientists can understand, Canaanite migrants developed the alphabet in ancient Egypt. This is the very alphabet that would spread around the world and ultimately become what is used today in English, Spanish, French, and many other languages. The pottery fragment itself was probably imported from Cyprus and was written on with ink in the earliest Canaanite alphabet. Scientists have not been able to decipher the short text, nor have they been able to figure out how the Canaanites managed to go from hieroglyphics to an actual alphabet. The Hittite Civilization. An archaeological discovery made over 100 years ago has been the source of some recent controversy. It involves the ancient biblical society of the Hittites, with experts now saying that proof of the Hittite civilization validates the historical record of the Bible, seeing as the Hittites are mentioned repeatedly throughout both the Hebrew and Christian Bibles. Historians have argued for many years over the existence of the Hittite, or at least their relationship with the biblical scripts. There simply hasn't been enough archaeological evidence to prove they ever existed. The Hittites were mentioned in the Old Testament at least 50 times. Then, in the early 1900s, German archaeologist Hugo Winkler heard of mysterious clay tablets found by looters in Turkey. He organized excavations in the area between 1906 and 1912, finding sculptures, temples, and a fortified tower. Even though the German archaeologists believed these ruins belonged to the Hittite civilization, there was no definitive proof. It wasn't until Hugo discovered what he believed was once a royal archive room filled with over 10,000 ancient clay tablets that the truth came to life. These tablets were deciphered by a Czech professor at the University of Vienna in 1915, at which point it was announced to the world that this ancient site was once the capital city of the Hittite kingdom, and that they had been known throughout history by another name, the Hattusha. But here's where the controversy, skepticism, and doubt came into play. Even though this discovery was made so long ago, people still argue against the Hittite culture ever being represented in the Bible. Some claim the Bible is talking about a completely different civilization of people with a similar name. Unfortunately, there is no way to tell which civilization is depicted in the Bible. Scientists don't even know what became of these people, where they came from, or why their capital was abandoned. Neolithic salt miner. Way before Stonehenge, people in Neolithic Britain were already mining salt. That's how important salt has been to humans. A new discovery of an extremely old salt processing site in the United Kingdom has archaeologists saying that whoever lived in Britain way before Stonehenge was built may have been the first salt miners anywhere in Europe. Called salterns, there have been several found in continental Europe, mostly in Poland and the Balkans, dating back to the Iron Age. This salt mine dates back to 3,800 BC and was found at a coastal hilltop archaeological site near Loftus. Archaeologists uncovered a trench with broken shards of pottery, 3 hearths, and evidence of a storage pit. Some of the pieces of pottery still contain salt deposits. All the evidence points to salt processing. According to Steve Sherlock, the archaeologist who was in charge of the dig, the people who used this mine for processing salt were probably pioneers and the first in the United Kingdom to clear forests to build settlements. Pottery found here was introduced by people who migrated from northern France about 4000 BC, and they are the ones that most likely brought the salt mining know-how.
But like pretty much every group of Neolithic people anywhere in the world 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, we don't really know who they were. We do know that salt would have been a rare and highly valuable commodity at the time, as it allowed foodstuffs to be preserved for use throughout the winter. Other structures found at the site indicate that it was a wealthy and thriving community. The unknown kingdom of King Hartapu. In a very rare occurrence, archaeologists in Turkey have discovered a civilization previously unknown to historians. According to Professor James Osborne, an archaeologist who specializes in Iron Age cities, nobody had any idea about the ancient kingdom. They discovered it in 2019, when a farmer told the group of archaeologists that he found a piece of stone with strange writing on it in a nearby canal. It was clear the group was standing at an ancient site that had been lost to time. While they couldn't begin excavations immediately, James Osborne was able to get the curious stone tablet translated. The writing on the tablet was nothing short of shocking. It turned out to be some kind of military boast, written by someone named King Hartapu. Nobody had ever heard of this guy before, yet the stone told of a great military victory over the kingdom of Phrygia led by the infamous King Midas. It's true that Phrygia had been ruled by many different kings who went by the name of Midas. But dating of the stone corresponds to the time in which the true King Midas, the one who turned things to gold with his touch, ruled over Phrygia. Phrygia was a powerhouse kingdom, and defeating it would have taken a significant force. It's hard to believe that historians had never heard of this kingdom before, but thanks to King Hartapu and King Midas, they were not entirely lost to history. Researchers are, of course, excited to learn more and piece together the ancient puzzle. The Anunnaki Gods. Who are the Anunnaki? Anyone obsessed with mysterious ancient civilizations knows that the Anunnaki are at the very top of the list when it comes to the unknown. Depending on who you ask, the Anunnaki can be one of many things. Some claim they were the gods of the Sumerian civilization that existed from 4100 to 1750 BC, as is suggested by stone artifacts and ancient depictions left behind. The Sumerians were the first civilization on Earth to divide time into hours and minutes, putting them at the forefront of human advancement. It makes sense that they also came up with one of the first complex religions featuring a pantheon of powerful deities. But wait just a minute, because some believe that the Anunnaki were not simply gods made up out of thin air by the Sumerians. There is a popular theory that says the Anunnaki were actually a civilization of their own. Some claim they were living, breathing beings. Of course, these same people believe that the Anunnaki were an ancient civilization of space travelers who came to Earth to enslave the human race, beginning with the Sumerians. But whether the Anunnaki were indeed a civilization of their own, possibly a society of reptilian humanoids that played a crucial role in advancing humankind, or if they were just mythological deities, well, science has no way of knowing, at least not until they come back and finish what they started.
The last stand for humanity. There's an amazing ruin that may have once served as the last stand for humanity. This site was found buried under the top of a hill in southeast Turkey. It may have been where the civilization prior to us held out as long as they could before being wiped away by God's angry flood. It's called Göbekli Tepe, a place I know you've heard me talk about before. But today I'm exploring a new theory, one that I think you'll want to hear. First and foremost, Göbekli Tepe is one of the most fascinating archaeological sites in the world, and one of the oldest at over 11,000 years old. Archaeologists consider it the oldest temple in the world, and one of the earliest monumental structures ever. It's part settlement, part stone circle, part antediluvian mystery. The size of Göbekli Tepe is impressive. It isn't one building, but a whole complex of structures. The smallest is 20 feet long, its pillars rising 10 feet high. The largest stone circle at the site is 65 feet across. There are giant freestanding limestone pillars 18 feet tall and weighing 8 tons. You would need heavy-duty machinery to move these stones, yet archaeologists expect us to believe that Stone Age people did it using what? An army of saber-toothed tigers and rope made out of grass? Do you believe it? Or do you believe they were a little more advanced than that? The pedestals upon which the giant pillars rest were carved straight from the bedrock of the hill. Those pillars aren't just boring old cylinders of stone either. They are carved to look like people. When you look at Göbekli Tepe from the right angle, you can see the standing pillars are actually 20-foot tall human figures gathered in a circle.
You can see their arms, their hands folded, their fox pelts, and even their loincloths. This is the Sistine Chapel of the Stone Age. In 2006, archaeologist Klaus Schmidt announced that Göbekli Tepe was built by people before they had established permanent settlements. In other words, this great feat of engineering came before agriculture, before breeding domesticated animals, and before villages. Schmidt said he didn't think anyone had ever lived at the site. His interpretation was that starting around 9,500 BC, hunter-gatherers started coming together annually to slowly build the monuments of Göbekli Tepe. They were nomads most of the year, but gathered as a community to build this place. They didn't care about cities or villages or growing food. They just wanted to build a megalithic ritual complex, one that makes the ancient Egyptian architects look like preschoolers with Lego blocks. This theory has recently been dismissed. Very new discoveries have shown that people did indeed live at Göbekli Tepe. More keeps being revealed from beneath the hill, including evidence of a fully functional settlement. The ritual structures were only part of the picture. This was a city, and it may have been huge. It could have been the capital of an intelligent civilization. But if that's true, what happened? And how far back does this civilization go? There is one key feature that most people fail to talk about. Göbekli Tepe was found filled with rocks, dirt, and thousands of animal bones. Archaeologists believe it was buried on purpose. Klaus Schmidt even argued that the culture would frequently bury their own sanctuaries. This means Göbekli Tepe may be built on the bones of an even older site. There could be temples here going back even further, but the big question is, how long ago? 15,000 years? 20,000 years? What made these people start this civilization to begin with? And what brought it to an end? Historians believe this could have been the last city to stand against the Great Flood. The jars built by giants. Apparently, we are not living the first iteration of human society. Civilization existed long ago, so long ago that the only traces of it that remain are crudely hewn stones, like the giant stone jars and Laos that don't quite fit in the mainstream historical narrative of humanity. They appear to have been built by real giants. The giant stone jars look out of this world. Local legends say they were carved by a race of giants to, get this, brew rice beer. Sounds kind of good, right? However, archaeologists aren't convinced that giants even existed. Modern scholars say the giant stone jars were built by normal-sized humans, and also that they were used in burial rituals. The jars in Laos can be found scattered throughout ancient forests, poking out of hillsides, and even tucked away on remote mountain ridges. They aren't grouped in one place, but rather dotted across miles of rugged terrain. Researchers call them the Jars of the Dead. The reason for the nickname is a little ghoulish. Real human remains have been found at some of the sites, dated to about 2,500 years old. Even after finding bodies, there is no information on who originally made the jars. Scientists don't have a clue. They keep repeating their claims that the jars were used as burials. Bodies were allegedly stuffed into the jars, sort of like placing cremated ashes in an urn. Only this was on a huge scale. There are about 400 carved stone jars in Laos's famous Plain of Jars, and that's only one site. There are many other sites, with the jars themselves weighing more than 10 tons in some cases, and they stand over 10 feet tall. What race could be responsible? Which culture? Why didn't they leave any cities behind? If they could move and mold stones that weighed 10 tons, shouldn't they have been advanced enough to build a city? It is possible that these stones were left behind by a much older civilization, one associated with real giants. In 2016, excavations revealed that some of the giant stone jars were surrounded by pits filled to the brim with human bones. They looked like mass graves. To make matters even stranger, Laos isn't the only place that has giant jars. They have recently been found in India too, suggesting the culture that made them was global. In 2020, researchers from the Australian National University discovered monolithic stone jars in India's Assam region. That's about 500 miles from Laos, far removed from the Southeast Asian giant jars. But these ones are very similar, reaching the same height, about 10 feet. They appear to have been made by the same craftsmen. In the case of India, some of the jars were found to contain cremated human remains. That backs up the funerary ritual hypothesis. But it still doesn't explain why the jars had to be so big, or how they were transported through dense, treacherous jungle. Other giant stone jars have been found in Indonesia too. There is something more than just a prehistoric ritual happening here. Any thoughts on what it is? And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a huge thank you to William Russ and Aldradian Voltenian and his daughter for supporting this channel. Hi guys! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. The Castles of the Sea. Everything you've ever known about ancient history could be wrong. Civilization didn't begin in Sumer, Harappa, or Egypt in 3500 BC. It started more than 10,000 years ago, and then it was destroyed by a global cataclysm. The Bible said it was a flood, sent by God to get rid of the race of evil giants known as the Nephilim. According to Graham Hancock, the author of Fingerprints of the Gods and host of Ancient Apocalypse, there are 600 flood myths around the world. The story of Noah and his ark is only one of them. While scholars claim these myths are psychological archetypes, stories of birth and creation that every society came up with, Graham has a different idea. He thinks the 600 flood myths are variations of a very real event. 22 years ago, long before Graham Hancock was a household name, he brought to attention a series of sunken settlements. He learned to dive just so that he could research submerged ruins in India, Southeast Asia, and the Mediterranean. Graham Hancock claimed these sunken ruins were from as far back as 17,000 years ago. Graham believes the ruins belonged to a lost civilization that found itself flooded 12,000 years ago. The way Graham explains it, you have to keep in mind what the world looked like during the Ice Age. There were ice caps across northern Europe and North America. These ice caps were blankets of solid ice. Nobody would have been able to live anywhere in the interior, which left people building cities along the coastlines. A great example of this is the Persian Gulf, a place that was completely dry until 12,000 years ago. While it was dry, it would have been an excellent place to build a pre-flood city. Some of these cities have been found. India's National Institute of Ocean Technology discovered the ruins of an ancient city 25 miles from the coast of Gujarat. That's quite a distance. 25 miles from the shore, at the bottom of the Gulf of Cambay, there is a city estimated at 10,000 years old. If Hancock is right, the proof we need that an antediluvian civilization existed is underwater, but there are still other questions that need answering. How advanced were these people? And how long had their civilization been around before the melting glaciers flooded their cities? The stone walls at the bottom of Lake Huron. At the bottom of Lake Huron in Michigan is a prehistoric structure. Some scientists say it was used as a caribou drive lane by ancient hunters. Other researchers think it could hint at a much older civilization, maybe even one that predates the rest of humanity. Could there be a connection between the sunken structure in Lake Huron and Göbekli Tepe in Turkey? Scientists don't think that's the case. John O'Shea from the University of Michigan recently published his findings after investigating the underwater ruins since 2008. John believes the prehistoric structure, which appears to be a huge stone wall, gives the clearest picture ever of the people who lived in the Great Lakes region when the Ice Age came to an end. John said the wall structure is more complex than anything that's been seen before. It's hard to imagine the most complex prehistoric structure in North America at the bottom of a lake. How and why? It could be because it's been preserved underwater for around 9,000 years. While structures on the surface could have been dismantled or destroyed, the one at the bottom of the lake was left untouched. Though it's not without some damage. Water has eroded it a lot over the centuries. Although there is one huge structure, John O'Shea has found more than 60 others. What's unusual is that John has identified all 60 stone constructions as hunting blinds. John believes that as caribou herds roamed the spruce and wetlands of the north, Native Americans built stone walls to funnel them to their doom. It would have been a great way to hunt a lot of animals at once for their meat. But 60 blinds, and all at the bottom of a lake? Isn't that a little over the top for nomadic bands of hunters? Wouldn't it make more sense that all of these constructs were walls that surrounded villages? Or perhaps the foundations of castles or forts that crumbled 10,000 years ago? What are your thoughts? John claims the hunting blinds were built by the first people who inhabited the New World. He called them the descendants of the first folks who came to North America hunting mastodons. The reason the structures are underwater now is that as the Ice Age ended, the glaciers melted and filled the lake. The Lebombo Bone. I recently did a video discussing an amazing relic known as the Ishango Bone. Now I want to talk about the Lebombo Bone, an artifact even older and more mysterious that defies explanation. It's the source of a lot of controversy, so maybe together you and I can make sense of it. If you remember my recent video, you'll know the Ishango Bone is believed to be a mathematical tool made by humans in the Democratic Republic of the Congo 20,000 years ago. Either it was a mathematical device, an early astronomical tool, or something of that nature. The Lebombo Bone is twice as old. It's between 43,000 and 42,000 years old, discovered in a cave in South Africa. The Border Cave, to be precise, located high up in the Lebombo Mountains. Scientists have never been able to identify which animal the Ishango bone came from, be it human or beast. But that's not the case here. The Lebombo bone is a baboon fibula, or a calf bone. It's covered in the same kinds of markings as the bone from the Congo. The etchings on the bone make it look as if it was used for counting something. Some researchers think it was a tally stick meant for keeping track of some vital information. It has 29 notches on it, though, which has led other researchers to suggest it was used as a lunar phase counter. If that's true, it could mean that African women were the first mathematicians and the first astronomers. They may have used baboon bones to keep track of their menstrual cycles. So how does this fit in with our discussion of ancient civilizations? Because this is a huge advancement in human thinking. Other notched bones have been found that are twice as old as this one, more than 80,000 years old. But what scientists can't agree on is if the notches were decorative, functional, or accidental. If humans or human ancestors were already tracking lunar phases 80,000 years ago, what made them start? When did humans go from being animals worried about the present to looking up at the stars and start tracking them? The Mohenjo-Daro Massacre. Now let's look at the Harappans of South Asia, a civilization that may have been annihilated by atomic war. In antiquity, starting around 4,500 years ago, their empire controlled an area significantly larger than Egypt or Mesopotamia. They were one of the earliest civilizations in the world, yet they were annihilated with a whimper. Some believe they were blasted with a nuclear weapon without any warning. It seems crazy, but there is evidence that supports this theory. One of the most important cities of the Harappans, also known as the Indus Valley culture, was Mohenjo-Daro. 30 years ago, archaeologists published a study claiming that the Harappans of Mohenjo-Daro were destroyed by an army of invaders who slaughtered them in the streets. The report came because of the staggering number of bodies found in Mohenjo-Daro lying in the open. The evidence points to a massacre, with people being killed seemingly as they went about shopping for groceries. It was as if they had no warning, with people not even seeking shelter or trying to hide. Archaeologists tried to explain this by saying they were ambushed by the Aryans, a violent group of warriors who took the city when they weren't prepared and burned it to the ground. It was the equivalent of the Mongol hordes terrorizing European cities in the 13th century. The Aryans may have made the Harappans go extinct. Or something more dramatic happened. Excavations at the largest Harappan sites have not yielded any discoveries of an invasion. When dealing with an ancient armed conflict, archaeologists can typically find weapons. They find arrowheads, spears, swords, heads, brutalized bodies. There are a lot of different ways to confirm an invasion. Nothing of the sort has been found in the Harappan cities of India and Pakistan, but there have been skeletons found that prove a mass casualty event. In Mohenjo-Daro, after 9 years of excavations, scientists only found 37 skeletons from the Harappan period. These skeletons were contorted in ugly positions, almost looking as if they were thrown about by a blast. Additionally, the skeletons were only found in one area of town, the residential district. Not a single body was found in the fortified citadel, where you would anticipate a defense to have been made against an invading force. So where in the world are all the bodies? There are some remains that look like they were blown apart, and then the rest of the city is deserted. Doesn't even make sense. So the question is, could there have been an atomic attack that obliterated everyone? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The Maya controversy. The Maya civilization may have once been completely underwater. Some archaeologists are finding more evidence to back up Graham Hancock's theory about an antediluvian civilization. There are tons of Maya ruins in Mexico, many of them studied meticulously by scientists for decades. Yet little is known about their culture and their history. Most of what scholars understand about the early days of the Maya Empire comes from a rather unexpected source: the Spanish. During the brutal subjugation of the Maya people, the Spanish invaders destroyed almost all of their sacred books, known as codices. These codices may have contained irreplaceable information on where the Maya came from. The Spanish also destroyed many of their temples, building Christian churches on top of them. What did survive the catastrophe are the chronicles of the Spanish conquistadors. In these records, you can read stories about the magnificent things the Spanish saw when they arrived in the New World. The Spanish gawked at the enormous pyramid complexes, which had been abandoned before their arrival. They were amazed by the observatories where Maya astronomers looked to the heavens for answers. There is no denying that the Maya were incredibly advanced in science. They had been for a long time. What researchers find hard to reconcile is the fact that the Maya sort of came out of nowhere. It's almost as if they magically arrived in Guatemala, started building pyramids, and spread across the region. Did you know the largest pyramid complex in the Americas was built in 2700 BC? La Dante Pyramid in El Mirador, Guatemala is 4,700 years old. Why is the oldest Maya pyramid also the most impressive? Scientists have been finding similar examples of these inexplicable timelines across Central America. The most magnificent architecture is also the earliest. It's as if the Mayas started with an incredible understanding of complex engineering and then slowly forgot. The Maya arrived in places like Copan, Chichen Itza, Tikal, and El Mirador with thousands of years of scientific wisdom already under their belt. Try to make sense of that. Then, as the years went by, their engineering projects became less sophisticated. It almost seems that the Maya began devolving, becoming more bloodthirsty, more brutal, and less scientifically inclined. Then their entire civilization collapsed, and scientists still don't know what happened. Keep watching because the truth of the Maya flood is coming up soon. The Lost Martian Labyrinth. If I told you there was a labyrinth hidden underneath the Martian surface full of alien skeletons, would you tell me to take a hike? Well, just wait a second, because I think you might want to hear what I have to say first. Scientists have apparently found a mysterious hole on Mars that could be a gateway to ancient life. Scientists have been searching for life on Mars since before the first telescope. When early humans saw that little red dot in the sky, they wondered what might be on its surface, and who might be looking back at them. With today's technology, scientists can now look directly at the surface, and even sometimes beyond it. NASA recently released an image of Arsia Mons, one of the biggest shield volcanoes in the entire solar system. The picture was captured by HiRISE, the camera on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter flying 159 miles above Mars. The image shows a huge hole on the slope of the volcano. Scientists aren't sure what the hole is or what's hiding underneath it. The most likely explanation is that it's the entrance to an underground labyrinth of lava tubes. If there's no life on the surface, scientists think there could be life inside the tubes. They also believe the underground tunnels could one day house human settlements. Mars is not the best candidate for a habitable planet. It has no magnetic field to protect from the radiation of the sun, but living in an underground tunnel could reduce radiation levels by up to 50 times. Living in a labyrinth could also protect humans from the temperature swings at the surface. A summer day on the Martian equator is surprisingly comfortable at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Not bad, especially after this summer, but at night it plummets to minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a bit too chilly, even with a good winter coat. There are those who believe that humans originally came from Mars. It's a theory so out there that it makes the Loch Ness Monster seem like a big friendly fish. But there is some logic to the idea. If humans did have a civilization 500 million years ago on Earth, and if they did have knowledge of advanced technology, maybe that knowledge was passed down from settlers from Mars. Of course, this theory is extremely sci-fi, so let me know what you think. Maybe when Mars lost its atmosphere, its surface water, and turned into a hellscape, some humans managed to flee to Earth. Maybe others escaped into the newly discovered labyrinth beneath the Martian surface. Do you think there could be life underground? Let me know in the comments. The Dorchester Pot. 300 million years ago, somebody made a cast iron cup in Oklahoma. It's a perfect piece of metal, a little dinged, but what do you expect after so many centuries? After making it, the cup was lost, buried, and became stuck in a chunk of coal. In 1912, that chunk of coal was broken open at a mine in Wilburton by Frank J. Kennard. This is what you would call an out-of-place artifact, a real relic from a time that doesn't make sense. Humans have hardly been making metal cups for more than a few millennia. It sounds like science fiction, but out-of-place artifacts are real. In 1912, when the cup was found in Oklahoma, it was examined by researchers. They confirmed it to be made from cast iron, an alloy of carbon mixed with iron. The giant chunk of coal even kept an imprint of the bowl in it, proving the cup came out of the coal. It didn't fall in there recently. It took 300 million years for the coal to form around the cast iron cup. These things don't just happen overnight. So how do you explain it without stepping into the realm of science fiction? You can't. The same way you can't explain the 500 million-year-old Dorchester Pot or the wolf's egg iron, an artifact from 60 million years ago. The Dorchester Pot is particularly fascinating. It was found in Dorchester in 1852, embedded in a rock. The rock was blasted into pieces during the explosion that destroyed the Roxbury conglomerate. When scientists inspected the rock, they found it to be from 500 million years ago. The only thing that makes sense is that the relic is left over from an old human civilization that had at least reached 18th century technology 500 million years ago. Of course, there are the naysayers and negative Nellies. The people who claim the Dorchester Pot is nothing but a candlestick holder from the Victorian era that wound up in the debris after the explosion. But there's more, like the wolf's egg iron discovered in 1885 in Austria. This relic was also found in a piece of coal, just like the Oklahoma cup. Only this was no cup, and it definitely wasn't a candlestick holder. It was a metal cube, like some weird alien artifact. The small cube was stuck in a block of coal which formed during the Tertiary period. It has 4 flat sides and 2 sides that are convex, with a deep groove running around the middle. Scientists have analyzed the cube, but they always come up with inconclusive results. Some have said the cube emits unusual aura. It supposedly has its own unique gravity. Others claim it's evidence of a technologically advanced society in prehistoric times. Adolf Gert from the University of Bonn suggested it was meteoric in origin. It could be a space rock, one that looks suspiciously like an energy cube. From 1950 until 1958, the wolf's egg iron was kept on display at a museum in Linz. Then it was taken by scientists who bombarded it with electron beams. Their microanalysis showed no traces of nickel or chromium, meaning the rock most likely didn't come from space. It could be cast iron, as suggested by Dr. Rudolf Brill in Vienna. But where did it come from? When taken individually, these artifacts are easy to dismiss. But when you start to realize there are dozens of them, then you start to get suspicious. The Maya civilization was flooded. To solve the mystery of the Maya, I must introduce you to one of the top researchers of Maya history. His name is Dr. Richard Hansen, director of El Mirador Basin Project. He's been studying the Maya almost his entire life. His opinion on anything Maya should be taken very seriously. Richard believes that the Maya did not have a mother culture. This is a big shock because a lot of scientists think the Olmec were the origin of the Maya. The general consensus among scholars is that the Olmec built cities, developed a culture, and then slowly transitioned into the Maya. Dr. Hansen said that's not the case at all. He believes there is evidence that the Maya destroyed the Olmec and burned down their cities like La Venta, through a series of vicious military campaigns. The Olmec may have been more like a rival nation than a mother culture. But where did the Maya come from? That's the big mystery I'm here digging through the evidence, trying to solve with you. There was a recent geological study done on the surface features of the Yucatan Peninsula. Scientists identified tsunami damage from about 1,500 years ago. Their data shows that there may have been more tsunamis in the thousands of years before that. These were big tsunamis too. I'm talking about waves 50 feet tall that would have been enough to wash away whole cities. Evidence of water damage has been found in Chichen Itza, Coba, Uxmal, and other Maya cities spread across the jungle. There are even flooded building complexes underwater in Mexico. Take a look at this image from Google Earth, showing the foundations of structures at the bottom of the ocean off the Yucatan Peninsula. Here's an image from Angela Mickle, Satellite Archaeology. It shows the baylands just off the coast of Campeche, Mexico. If you look closely, you can see the ruins of what appears to be an ancient Maya complex. This may have been one of the cities washed away by a tsunami. Now check out this photo. It shows a highway submerged 30 feet under the ocean, just off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. This is an image of a real road from the Maya Empire that is currently underwater. Recent evidence has emerged that the west coast of the United States was flooded about 10,000 or 12,000 years ago. The flooding was so bad it carved out entire valleys in Washington and Oregon. Researcher Randall Carlson said there were mega floods across most of the U.S. They destroyed whole civilizations. The floods were even recorded by the Zuni, Lakota, and the Maya. What all this means is that the Maya may have existed in the Americas long before when mainstream scientists said they did. They could have been around for more than 10,000 years, maybe more than 12,000 years. Their original cities may have been wiped out by relentless floods and tsunamis. The same flood that destroyed the rest of the world, Europe, Göbekli Tepe, may have hit the Maya where they lived in Central America. It was away from the ice caps in an ideal environment for an early civilization to thrive. Then, after the flood, it took ages for the Maya to re-establish themselves and rebuild their cities. Maybe they had more technological knowledge, but the flood washed it away. How did the Inca build this? How would you like to visit a mysterious Inca ruin that is even more impressive than Machu Picchu? It seems like something that should be impossible, but it's not. The ruins of Pisac offer a glimpse into the most jaw-dropping engineering of the Inca. Pisac stands at a ridiculous altitude of more than 9,000 feet above sea level. I hope you don't get altitude sickness. Even if you do, it would be worth the visit. Pisac boasts a history that predates the Incas. Long before they arrived, the Amaru Mayu, Pillawaras, and Antis cultivated the land. They weren't big urban builders. They altered the hills, turning them into tiered farmlands. Then came the Incas. Around the 15th century, under the visionary leadership of Emperor Pachacutec, Pisac underwent a dramatic transformation. The Incas, masters of their craft, arrived with advanced technology that seemed almost magical to the earlier inhabitants. Between 1438 and 1472, Emperor Pachacutec reshaped Pisac into an urban paradise, one that still stands to this day as a testament to how good the Inca were at building marvels. At the tallest point of the city, on a majestic outcrop looking over the valley, there is an astronomical calendar known as the sun tether. The sun tether is an old Inca sundial used in ceremonies, especially those that involved making sacrifices to the sun god Inti. Each June, the sun tether aligns perfectly with the sunrise on the solstice. And you know what that means? Time for some blood. Pisac is also home to something you'll never see at Machu Picchu, something so bizarre that even if you don't care about ancient engineering, you're going to want to see this. Drumroll, please. It's a 500-year-old guinea pig farm. Near the top of the city is a crumbling guinea pig facility known as a colcas. I don't know why, but the Inca were obsessed with guinea pigs. I guess they're cute. If you've ever traveled to Peru, you've no doubt seen guinea pigs all over the place. They still have guinea pig festivals today. Do you have a guinea pig? If so, your guinea pig is a great descendant from those in South America. They used to be wild animals, although they were domesticated a very long time ago. Pisac is also home to the remnants of fountains, canals, terraces, and residential neighborhoods. And the stonework? Prepare to be amazed. The precision and artistry are simply mind-blowing. There are watchtowers, cemeteries, city walls, secret tunnel passageways. It is truly phenomenal. The stones fit together so perfectly, it's hard to believe the city was made half a millennium ago. Were we on the moon in 2309 BC? How did humans get to the moon 4,300 years ago, and why did it take us so long to return? Archaeologists, historians, and astronomers might be completely wrong about the ancient world's ability to travel beyond the stars. In the early part of the 20th century, there weren't many people who believed that human beings would get to outer space. In 1926, Professor A.W. Bickerton said the concept of going to the moon was foolish and impossible. In 1935, astronomer F.R. Moulton wrote that humans would never travel into outer space. And in 1957, the idea of space travel was called utter bilge by Dr. Richard van der Riet Woolley. 8 months later, the Russian satellite Sputnik was orbiting our planet. As we all know today, space travel is absolutely possible. I take you now to a remote area in northern Tibet, to the ruins of the Hsing Nu capital. In 1725, several monoliths, a broken pyramid, and a tower of blue porcelain were allegedly discovered by an archaeologist named Duparc. Although back then he was probably more of an explorer than an archaeologist. He also found the remains of a royal palace. Within the palace were 2 thrones, one with the image of the sun on it and the other with the moon. There is next to no information on Duparc or the ruins, and none of what I'm telling you right now has been confirmed by scientists or historians. The story goes that Duparc supposedly found a massive milky white stone near the twin thrones that came from the moon, an actual moon rock. In 1952, a Soviet expedition arrived in the ruined city where they met with a group of Tibetan monks. The monks showed them ancient documents, which confirmed everything that Duparc had said in his writing more than 200 years earlier. The documents claim that the milky white stone was brought to Earth from the moon. But how is that possible? Could human beings have reached the moon in ages past? I guess it's not impossible. There are bits and pieces of evidence scattered across the world that humans have been deeper into space than the moon. In Japan, strange clay figurines have been found of people wearing bulky spacesuits. In India, the ancient text, the Mahabharata, describes sky chariots that ejected red flame as they rocketed toward the sky like backwards comets. In Guatemala, an ancient description mentions a circular chariot of gold in the sky. In China, Chuang-Tzu wrote about a trip he made into space in the 3rd century BC, traveling 32,000 miles from the planet. There are a surprising number of Chinese documents in which people freely admit they went to space. In 2309 BC, Emperor Yao's engineer went to the moon using a celestial bird, which allowed him to explore space by mounting the current of luminous air. The writing is a little cryptic because it was 4,000 years ago, but it seems to be describing a spaceship. It's not totally crazy to think a celestial bird could be a reference to a ship of some kind, and the current of luminous air could be the exhaust from a rocket. Don't be too fast to dismiss the engineer's account as a meaningless legend. There is more to this story that makes it worthwhile. The engineer wrote that when he flew into space, he did not perceive the rotary movement of the sun. He was surprised because he didn't see the sun orbiting the planet, which you don't see in space. This might be the most convincing piece of evidence yet. The ancient engineer's statement seems to corroborate his story. Nobody else on Earth realized that the sun was a stationary object 4,300 years ago. The engineer was genuinely shocked to see the sun hovering in space like a big ball of gas. If Emperor Yao's engineer really did travel to the moon, who took him there? Was it a spaceship built by human hands, or did some visiting aliens take the engineer on a field trip?
Although he probably would have mentioned them, right?
I can't tell you if Duparc really found a moonstone in Tibet in the 18th century. Maybe he did, or maybe he never even existed. What I can say is that there seems to be evidence from all around the globe that points to humans somehow visiting space during the Bronze Age. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Dale Denstead and Edwin Pina for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. The secret building techniques of the Tartessians. 2,500 years ago on the Iberian Peninsula, a civilization emerged seemingly out of thin air. We're talking about the Tartessians, a Bronze Age powerhouse whose incredible feats of engineering still baffle archaeologists today. An international team of scholars from universities in Spain and Norway have been studying the archaeological site of Casas del Turunuelo for 10 long years. The site dates back to the 5th century BC. The Greeks, who considered them almost mythical, described the Tartessians as a wealthy and sophisticated people. Their capital city, Tartessos, was a bustling port, a magnet for traders from across the Mediterranean. But here's the kicker. These folks appeared on the scene fully formed, with their own language, a deep understanding of metallurgy, and a knack for building monumental structures. It's as if they parachuted in with advanced blueprints and a fully trained workforce. They left behind some really unusual clues as to their origin. They seem to be a hybrid culture with some Phoenician influences and other aspects that were totally their own. Marta Lorenzon with the research team said their goal was to investigate how materials were processed and what the organizational structure behind the labor was. What they figured out is simple. The Tartessians had an incredibly advanced understanding of all local material. They didn't import their building supplies, they used what was available, which wasn't much beyond earth, soil, and sun-dried bricks to build very durable structures. The research team also found that the Tartessians coordinated their labor with extreme sophistication. It was like they were operating the Panama Canal or something. They had skilled artisans who oversaw each level of construction, from the preparation of materials to the building itself. But just as suddenly as they appeared, the Tartessians vanished. Could they have been overshadowed by the rising dominion of Rome, or were they defeated by Carthage? Could the Tartessians have moved somewhere else? Let me know your thoughts. The first weapon of mass destruction. Let's forget about civil engineering for a second and check out a weapon of mass destruction. It's called the Hellburner, and it was used as a diabolical means of destroying one's enemies. The invention of the Hellburner takes us back to the age of wooden ships, when fire was the scariest thing to a sailor, of course, next to the Kraken. Naval warfare was a fiery affair, with ships and their crews reduced to ashes in a terrifying spectacle. The Greeks were pioneers in this grim business. They weren't content with simply lobbing flaming arrows or hurling burning pots of pitch. No, they took it to a whole new level of diabolical. Sacrificial ships. Picture this, a small boat brimming with highly flammable substances like tar and turpentine. They would set it ablaze and steer it towards the enemy fleet. The result? A spectacular explosion, destroying enemy vessels while not costing a single Greek sailor their life. Talk about efficiency. But the Greeks weren't satisfied with a mere fiery demise. They experimented with naphtha and quicklime, creating a mixture so volatile that it ignited on contact with water. Think about the chaos. And please don't try this at home. It's believed the fire ships of the Greeks, used as early as the 7th century BC, were the first incendiary weapons ever, but they certainly weren't the last. Fast forward 2,000 years, and shipbuilding had undergone a dramatic transformation. Enter gunpowder, a game changer that amplified the destructive potential of these fiery vessels. Fire ships were no longer mere fire starters. They were floating bombs. In 1585, the Habsburg forces laid siege to the city of Antwerp. The Habsburg army, led by Alexander Farnese, built a bridge across the river between Antwerp and the sea. The bridge cut off the main waterway into the city, and this was done to starve the population into submission. What Alexander didn't realize was that the Dutch had an Italian military engineer on their payroll named Federico Giambelli. He promised to destroy the bridge, but said he would need 3 large merchant ships to do it. His request was denied. Federico was given 2 smaller vessels and told to make it work, and he did. He turned the 2 ships into the biggest bombs Europe had ever seen. He called them hell burners. Federico built a 40-foot-long, 16-foot-wide chamber within each ship, sealed with bricks and mortar. Inside, a monstrous 3 tons of gunpowder lay dormant, its power contained by 5-foot-thick walls. But Federico wasn't content with just a big bang. He wanted chaos. He filled the spaces around the gunpowder with a deadly cocktail of iron shards, rocks, and other projectiles. These would become a terrifying rain of shrapnel upon detonation. Now, the question remained, how to detonate these behemoths without sacrificing a single soul. One ship was equipped with a simple delayed fuse, but for the other, Federico needed something more sophisticated. He turned to a local clockmaker, who ingeniously designed a mechanical timer linked to a flintlock mechanism. This was the world's first time bomb. The moment of truth arrived. The timer on the first ship malfunctioned, resulting in a disappointing fizzle. But the second ship, armed with the ingenious clockwork mechanism, charged towards the bridge. Then a deafening explosion ripped through the night sky. The ship was vaporized, the bridge was obliterated, and 800 Spanish soldiers died instantly. And then came the shrapnel. 1,000,000 shards of stones and iron rained like hail, knocking down houses several miles away. Military historian Robert O'Connell once called the hellburner history's first weapon of mass destruction. The world wouldn't see another bomb like this until World War I, when British Royal Engineers ignited 496 tons of explosives. But that's a story for another day. If you want to learn more about ancient weapons, be sure to subscribe and check out some of my other videos. We've got a ton. This is how you cure a hangover. If scientists could come up with a hangover cure, it might be the most appreciated invention of the 21st century. But according to archaeologists, there already is a hangover cure. The ancient Egyptians invented it 4,000 years ago. You didn't think the people who built the pyramids wouldn't have a cure for a hard night of drinking, did you? An ancient piece of papyrus written in Greek but found in Egypt has now been decoded. The papyrus gives the secret to surviving a night of intense alcohol intake using something you would not expect. These days, you probably run to your cabinet and scrounge around for ibuprofen. But if you woke up with a pounding headache in ancient Egypt, you put on a leafy necklace. The papyrus says that anyone with a drunken headache should string together leaves from the Alexandrian Kama-Daphne shrub, then wear them around their neck. It was sort of like a necklace of garlic to ward off a vampire. The burning question is, did it work? Can wearing the necklace of leaves allow you to drink all weekend and feel hunky-dory on Monday? Scientists don't really know. In fact, they don't know at all. They don't know if the bush could ease a light migraine or if it could cure an alcohol-fueled headache. If anyone happens to make such a necklace and try it out, let us know how it goes. The recently translated papyrus is one of 500,000 documents discovered in the Egyptian town of Oxyrhynchus. You heard me right, 500,000 documents. Imagine all the knowledge that's in there. They were collected by Bernard Grenfell and Arthur Hunt roughly a century ago. But as you can imagine, going through that many bits of paper takes time. Only now has the hangover cure been published because scientists are still going through all the documents. Hangovers were not the only thing that the Egyptians were trying to cure, obviously. Other documents in the collection include how to treat things like hemorrhoids, tooth pain, and ulcers. There's even a document outlining how to perform eye surgery. Pretty incredible stuff. Who lives in this hidden village? There is a village built so bravely at the edge of a sheer precipice that it's almost impossible to see it from below. For 500 years, a remote tribe has lived in this place, protected from the outside world. But good luck ever visiting. The hidden village is located more than 100 miles from the coastline of Muscat in Oman, tucked away in the folds of the Green Mountain, which rises about 9,000 feet above sea level. You can get most of the way by road, but soon the road runs out of asphalt, and the only way forward is on your own 2 feet or on the back of a mule. After several miles of climbing through the deep canyons and twisting valleys, then you get to Al Sagara, the isolated village that time forgot. Until 2005, foreigners weren't even allowed here. The Omani government had a military presence in the area, so it was forbidden to enter. There wasn't even any electricity in Al Sogara until 2010. The people here lived almost the exact same way as their ancestors did 1,000 years ago. Al Sogara has no schools, so most of its residents learned to read and write at home. It was only in the 1970s that a school opened several miles away, allowing people to get a formal education for the first time in 5 centuries. But they had to travel more than 5 miles there and then 5 miles back. Today, this incredible village is home to just 5 families. There are about 25 people in total. The village can't grow and it can't shrink. It must remain the same if it's going to survive. But where did the villagers come from, and how did they build this place? According to villager Salem al-Shariki, who was born in one of these stone houses, his ancestors came from Jordan more than 10 centuries ago. Every villager is said to be a descendant of a common ancestor who arrived in Oman during the Middle Ages. The very first people to arrive built their homes by burrowing into the walls of the mountain. They did this using simple rock tools like chisels. To build their gravity-defying homes, they mixed water with rocks to make clay. That's it. That's the whole secret. This unbelievable paradise in the secluded mountains has survived all of these centuries and is made of water and rocks. There's probably something the rest of the world can learn about these ancient techniques. The Conwy Bridge and Castle. Would you cross over one of the oldest suspension bridges in the world? What if it was attached to a castle that was built almost 800 years ago? I don't know which is more impressive, Conwy Castle or the Conwy Suspension Bridge. Conwy Castle in Wales is a sight to behold. It's the very definition of a fairy tale fortress. Soaring towers, thick stone walls, and a keep that whispers tales of long-forgotten battles. You can almost picture a king, perhaps the formidable Edward I himself, plotting his next move within those walls. Edward I, the Hammer of the Scots, spared no expense in constructing this masterpiece. A staggering 15,000 pounds, which was a fortune in the 13th century, was poured into its creation. To put that into perspective, you could barely rent a decent apartment today for that much. Talk about inflation. Edward I ruled from 1272 to 1307 and was largely responsible for a brutal conquest of Wales. After the conquest of Wales, the castle became the center of the walled town of Conwy, and over the centuries, it remained an important fortification. It withstood sieges, sheltered royalty like Richard II, and even served as a temporary stronghold for the legendary Owain Glyndwr. Sadly, the castle was completely ruined in 1665. First, it was deserted, and then the locals stripped it of its iron and lead. It was the ancient equivalent of people ripping out the copper lines of an abandoned home. You're probably wondering about the suspension bridge. Even though it's an amazing piece of technology, it isn't as old as the castle. The bridge was built by Thomas Telford in 1822. It's considered one of the very first road suspension bridges in the world. Can you guess how much it cost? The bridge was built 500 years after the castle at a cost of about £51,000. See, inflation was already going crazy. Thomas Telford designed the bridge to look exactly like the castle, thereby tricking people into assuming the two are related. Check out this image from the National Library of Wales. It was done in 1840, showing the newly finished bridge leading to the ruined castle. The factory older than time. It has finally been proven that the Neanderthals were geniuses. Researchers have found a factory built by Neanderthals 65,000 years ago. You're not going to believe what our extinct ancestors were mass-producing. Archaeologists discovered the factory in the Iberian Peninsula, dated to 20,000 years before Homo sapiens ever set foot in Gibraltar. Think about how crazy that is for a second. Neanderthals engineered a factory before humans even arrived in the area. Stonehenge wouldn't be built for another 60,000 years. When researchers began poking through the mysterious site, they found a modified hearth and some sticky tar residue. This was no ordinary hearth. It looked like a fire pit, but it was too fancy. The hearth was a round hole about 9 inches across and just shy of 4 inches deep. It was made with a purpose, with its walls cut sharply vertical. There was also a trench extending from either side of the pit. Simple? Yes, but also possibly the first feat of precision engineering ever undertaken on the planet. The sticky tar residue turned out to be glue. This hearth, the miniature factory, was carefully designed to control the heat of the fire. It was just like how a medieval blacksmith would control the temperature inside of his forge. Were Neanderthals really that obsessed with making glue? Archaeologists already knew that Neanderthals used glue for a variety of reasons. Tar and resin were used to attach stone blades to wooden handles. Glue was used to make weapons, tools, and for rock art. What archaeologists hadn't known was how serious Neanderthals took their glue-making process. The so-called factory was carved into the floor of a cave. Neanderthal engineers, or maybe they were more like alchemists, hunched over the fire with twigs and shrubs. They distilled tar from rock rose leaves, mixed it with bat guano to make what was basically super glue. Buried Roman technology. You won't believe where an awesome piece of Roman technology was recently discovered. It's not the kind of place you typically find luxurious Roman burials and an aqueduct. It was found during the construction of an underground parking garage. This exciting discovery was made in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. 2,000 years ago, Serbia didn't exist, and neither did the city of Belgrade. Modern Belgrade was built on the ruins of a Roman settlement called Singidunum. It was the heart of the Roman Empire in Eastern Europe. Before construction on the parking garage got started, a full archaeological dig had to be carried out. Thank goodness! The parking lot was being built in the center of Belgrade, a place with history going back thousands of years. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that something awesome would turn up. Archaeologists with the Belgrade City Museum discovered 14 Roman tombs, including 4 massive stone sarcophagi. According to Milorad Ignjatovic from the museum, being buried in a massive stone box was the most luxurious way that a Roman could be put in the ground. It was the epitome of wealth. Archaeologists found some other cool stuff during the dig as well. For example, they unearthed ruins that were bombed by the Allies at the end of World War II. At the time, Serbia was Yugoslavia. Many of its buildings dated to the 17th century, when the Ottoman Turks still had a heavy presence in the area. They were blown to pieces during the war. But the real showstopper was the aqueduct. The whole aqueduct is now destroyed, but researchers were able to identify 200 feet of lead pipe. Milorad suspects it was built in the 2nd century AD as an extension of an even earlier aqueduct, which supplied fresh water to a nearby Roman fortress. The Romans brought their aqueducts with them wherever they invaded. I told you earlier that Belgrade was built on the ruins of a Roman city, but what I failed to mention is that the Romans built Singidunum on the ruins of an even earlier Celtic town. After the Romans defeated the tribes in the area in the 1st century AD, they secured the Celtic town for themselves. They built a garrison, changed its name, and constructed an aqueduct to keep everyone's cups full. Dragons and griffins in Siberia. What are dragons doing in Russia? A pair of huge megaliths have been found in rural Russia. It's believed they were carved by a culture that hasn't been around in 12,000 years. The size of these monuments is going to make you dizzy. According to a report from the Siberian Times, Russian archaeologist Ruslan Pozyolkov discovered the megaliths in 2013 while surveying the Altai Mountains. They appear to have been carved in the likeness of mythical creatures. One looks like a dragon and the other like a griffin. The truly confusing part is how old the monuments are. This is no prehistoric art project. Ruslan claimed the megaliths are 12,000 years old, meaning they were made at the end of the last ice age. These statues weigh an unprecedented 120 tons. The Egyptians couldn't have moved stones weighing 120 tons, so how did prehistoric people do it in the tundra? I suppose they could have pulled the stone along the ice, but I don't know if that's a good explanation. So maybe the megaliths are natural stone objects. How does Ruslan know that they represent 2 creatures from myth? Ruslan said the stone has artificial features similar to crocodiles and dinosaurs. There is something inherently monstrous about the huge stone statues. Ruslan also said that it's impossible for these rocks to have naturally cracked into the exact shapes of a dragon and a griffin. The dragon is a little suspect, but the griffin statue is right at home in Siberia. 3,000 years ago, the Scythian warlords of the Eurasian steppes were obsessed with griffins. For more than 1,000 years, griffins were a staple of Scythian society. Could there have been real griffins 12,000 years ago? It could explain why the giant head of one is carved into a solid chunk of granite. It could also explain why the Scythians were so interested in griffins. If humongous bird monsters existed, tales of them undoubtedly trickled down generation after generation. As for what mainstream scientists have to say, it's not much. Ruslan Pozyolkov's research has not been verified by other scientists. None of his claims have been peer-reviewed or published in a trustworthy scientific journal. At least not yet, plus there's lots of other things going on right now. Ruslan himself said he doesn't know which civilization created the massive structures. He doesn't know what purpose the megaliths may have served. And he definitely doesn't know how anyone moved 120 tons of rock without access to some advanced technology. These strange statues are not the only Siberian mystery that has captured the world's imagination of late. You might remember I recently discussed an impossible megalithic wall found in southern Siberia. It's called the Gornaya Shortia megaliths, and it makes about as much sense as the griffin statue. 8 miles from the small village of Orton is what appears to be the remnant of a prehistoric wall. It's stone blocks too big for ordinary humans to have moved. Did they have advanced technology that we don't know about? Is it all evidence of a forgotten civilization? Let me know your thought. The Giants of Patagonia. Have scientists found proof of an actual lost civilization of giant people? From the colossal Norse beings to the towering Greek titans, the biblical Goliath, or even the Chinese Angu, giants have been mentioned in cultures all over the world throughout recorded history. Practically every country around the world has tales and myths about giants. And among all these tales, there is one unusual giant that stands out: the mysterious Cap d'Oie. For a long time, people have thought that Patagonia was home to giants. This belief goes back to a story told by the explorer Ferdinand Magellan. During his travels, Magellan stopped with his men on the beaches of South America. They had landed in Patagonia and went inland to explore. It's said that they encountered indigenous people who were twice the size of a normal human. This is likely because some of the natives living in the region, most notably the Tehuelche, did happen to be larger than the average European was back then. This height difference could have been exaggerated, leading to the lasting myth that Patagonia was once a land of giants. But was that really all it was? A myth? Could it be possible that a few real giants roamed the Patagonian landscapes in the past, with Cap d'Oie being an extraordinary example of said giants? Well, let's back up a bit. Let me tell you more about this mysterious Cap d'Oie. He was supposedly a 12-foot tall behemoth. He was a giant by any definition of the word. He towered above normal folk and likely terrified them. It wasn't just his height that was intimidating, though. It was the fact that he had 2 heads. There are 2 stories that seem to conflict with one another when trying to understand the origin of the Cap d'Oie giant. According to the first narrative, Spanish sailors encountered Cap d'Oie around the year 1673 on the beaches of Patagonia. The giant monstrosity was then captured and taken prisoner on their ship. The sailors supposedly strapped Cap d'Oie to the vessel's mast for the return trip home. However, the giant didn't stay shackled for long. He broke free of the mast and then turned his sights to his captors. He attacked them, but he didn't win the fight. Cap d'Oie was killed when a pike pierced his chest. Later on, in the 19th century, the giant's preserved body somehow found its way to Britain, then to the United States. And in America, Cap d'Oie became a focal point of countless freak shows and sideshows. The preserved body of the 2-headed giant from a foreign land absolutely captivated audiences. On the other hand, an alternative account of the discovery of Cap d'Oie suggests that the giant was already dead when he was found on the Patagonian beach. Someone had impaled him through the chest with a spear. The death of Cap d'Oie is rather consistent in both stories. But in this version of events, Paraguay natives found the lifeless body and mummified it. They then incorporated the giant into their religious practices. But not long afterward, George Bickle, a British captain, heard about this unusual discovery. He then successfully infiltrated Paraguay and stole the remains of Cap d'Oie. And after the body snatching was done, he brought the giant's body back with him to Britain. In both versions, the body ends up in the possession of showmen who add the giant to their collection of curiosities. But there is still speculation as to the authenticity of this tale. Some believe the story to be genuine, but others are convinced that it's nothing but an elaborate hoax. If giants really did inhabit this region in the past, it would change everything we thought we knew about history. So, is there any actual evidence that titans existed in Chile and Argentina? There is. But again, this evidence is highly debated. The body of Cap d'Oie is just one piece of the puzzle. It's still around, kept on display at a museum in Baltimore, Maryland. Maybe you've seen it. Allegedly, the body was examined in the 1960s by physicians who claimed that it showed no obvious signs of it being a phony. But since then, no other experts have re-examined it. This is rather odd because you would think that scientists would be foaming at the mouth to analyze such a specimen, yet nobody seems interested. It's as if everyone has already made up their mind about Cap d'Oie being a convincing fake. There are also numerous giant footprints that have been found all over the globe. One such footprint was found in Paraguay. Scientists are beginning to dismiss these footprints though, saying that ancient peoples could have simply carved the prints by hand. But of all of the things to draw, why do all of these cultures choose to draw feet? What do you think about the possibility of giants living in Patagonia? Could the stories told by ancient explorers have some truth to them? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The bizarre star. Deep in space, 13,000 light-years away from Earth, scientists have stumbled upon a stellar mystery that could change everything we know about stars and how they die. They have found a very unusual star that has an elemental makeup that doesn't match any existing theories. Normally, a star this massive would collapse into a black hole, but not this one. Its discovery challenges our understanding of star explosions and how heavier elements in the universe are formed. It's like solving a cosmic puzzle that's been baffling astronomers for ages. The story began with Subrahmanyan Chandrasekhar's groundbreaking revelation that stars eventually die. Stars explode in supernovae, creating elements beyond hydrogen and helium, which eventually form new stars. But while studying data from the Sloan Digital Skies survey in 2023, researchers noticed something peculiar: a star behaving strangely. They used powerful telescopes to get a closer look and were very surprised. According to Alex G., the astronomer leading the investigation, everything about it was weird. The star's elemental composition hinted at a different kind of explosion, one we've never witnessed before. The star likely belonged to the universe's earliest stars, which exploded and gave birth to a new generation of stars, including the one that is now under scrutiny. Imagine witnessing this colossal explosion in the ancient skies, an event so powerful it could have dwarfed an entire galaxy. Another researcher on the team, Sanjana Curtis, explained that this discovery hints at a lost first generation of stars in the universe. It's like stellar archaeology, digging through the remnants of ancient stars to uncover secrets of the cosmos. In honor of this cosmic enigma, the scientists affectionately dubbed it the Barbenheimer star, a combination of the two biggest movies from the year of its discovery, Barbie and Oppenheimer. And now for a quick break, because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you again to Luciano. This helps us make more videos and more animations and all kinds of stuff, so thanks again! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The Ica Geoglyphs. Get ready for a wild adventure deep into the heart of ancient Peru. This new archaeological discovery in the Ica region is about to blow your mind. For a long time, the Ica area was known as a hotbed of ancient astronomical and religious wonders. And now, researchers have found something truly amazing. A team of students and archaeologists from the local university just uncovered 29 massive geoglyphs depicting felines and human figures. These massive artworks, some stretching over 130 feet long, were etched into the hillsides around the districts of El Ingenio and Changuillo. These artworks are really old, from about 300 BC to 100 AD, when the Paracas and the Nazca cultures were around. Geoglyphs are those giant figures and designs that get carved into the landscape, like the famous Nazca lines. But these newfound feline and humanoid shapes take things to a whole new level of prehistoric awesomeness. According to the lead archaeologist Omar Bendezu, these massive carved felines were likely viewed as sacred deities by the people of that time. In fact, the team found that the geoglyphs are all oriented towards the legendary Nazca lines. So maybe they were part of some grand ancient ritual or cosmological system. And the best part is, this is just the start.
The researchers want to keep studying these new sites to figure out exactly what they mean and why they're important. Who knows what other mind-blowing secrets about ancient Peruvian culture are still waiting to be found? From the famous Nazca lines to these colossal feline geoglyphs, it's clear that this part of the world was home to some seriously advanced ancient civilizations. And with technology like drones and specialized mapping software, archaeologists are finally able to uncover the full scale of these monumental prehistoric achievements. Looks like the great mysteries of ancient Peru continue. The more we know, it seems the less we know. Oldest long-necked marine reptile. Let's take a trip back in time to the age of sea monsters. A fossil of the mysterious marine reptile known as Trachelosaurus fischeri, close enough, has been hiding a remarkable secret. One that's just been uncovered by a team of paleontologists. Turns out it's the oldest long-necked reptile ever discovered. This peculiar creature was first discovered and described in the 19th century. It was found buried in layers of Middle Triassic rock in Barenberg an der Saale in Germany. The fossil has long puzzled scientists, but now an international research group led by Dr. Stefan Speakman has cracked the case. And let me tell you, the results are nothing short of evolutionary dynamite. Trachelosaurus fischeri is like the grandpa of all the dinosaurs that have been found so far, dating back a whopping 247 million years. This find represents a crucial evolutionary development that occurred in the wake of the catastrophic Permian-Triassic mass extinction event. 90 to 96% of marine species and approximately 70% of terrestrial species were wiped out. But like a phoenix, from the ashes rose the Trachelosaurus. By comparing the German fossil to new discoveries from China, the researchers were able to link Trachelosaurus to a similar long-necked reptile called Dinocephalosaurus. This link helped them finally figure out how to classify this weird and ancient creature once and for all. The Trachelosaurus fossil itself is quite the specimen. Its skeleton is scattered and jumbled within the rock, but the researchers were able to discern its unusually high number of vertebrae, a key identifying feature. They even found ancient footprints of land animals preserved alongside the marine reptile's remains. This rediscovery is an important step toward unraveling the rapid diversification of life that took place after the Permian extinction. It just goes to show how much more there is to learn from revisiting and reanalyzing historical fossil collections. All those things get put in drawers for hundreds of years. Lost Valley of Cities. Archaeologists have just uncovered a mind-blowing ancient civilization deep in the Amazon rainforest. It's like something straight out of a movie. Looks like Indiana Jones used to pack his bags and get back out there, because the hunt for lost cities and forgotten civilizations is far from over. Turns out, this lost world was home to at least 10,000 people who lived there around 2,000 years ago. That's around the same time as the Roman Empire over in Europe. Who knows, maybe the two civilizations knew about each other, although it's not likely. The first clues were spotted over 20 years ago by an archaeologist named Stefan Rostein. But back then, he wasn't sure what it all meant. Fast forward to 2023, and scientists have used some high-tech laser mapping to reveal the full extent of this ancient settlement. It was an entire network of villages, roads, and ceremonial structures, all hidden under the thick jungle canopy of Ecuador. The largest roads were over 30 feet wide and stretched for miles. And get this, there were over 6,000 earthen mounds that people lived and worshipped on. Researchers think this lost valley of cities was inhabited by a group called the Upano people for nearly a millennium, from around 500 BC to 600 AD. That's seriously impressive. At its height, some experts believe it may have been home to hundreds of thousands of people. It would have been the size of ancient London. Can you imagine the organizational skills and labor that would have been required to build this ancient Amazonian civilization? We're talking about a network of villages, ceremonial structures, and thousands of massive earthen mounds, all constructed without the benefit of modern machinery or technology. Building something on that scale in the dense Amazon jungle must have taken an incredible amount of coordinated planning and manpower. The people of this lost valley of cities had to organize large work crews, allocate resources, and execute complex construction projects across a wide area.
The logistics of it all would have been an enormous undertaking. It just goes to show how advanced and sophisticated these Amazonian societies really were, way before Europeans ever showed up. This discovery is flipping our understanding of the region on its head. The Amazon is no longer just a pristine wilderness. It was teeming with complex civilizations all along. Archaeologists are still piecing together the full story, but it's clear that this lost world was a real powerhouse in its day. Who knows what other amazing ancient sites are still waiting to be uncovered in these rainforests? The Shroud of Turin. For years, there's been a big debate over whether a famous religious relic called the Shroud of Turin is the real deal or not. It's supposedly the burial shroud that wrapped the body of Jesus after his crucifixion. Scientists have argued for decades over its authenticity, but new scientific tests have just thrown a major curveball into the mix. The fresh debate started in 2023, just last year, when an American archaeologist named William Meacham got permission to study some tiny threads from the shroud. He sent them off to a lab in Hong Kong, and the results were astonishing. The flax used to make the linen fabric came from the Middle East, specifically the region that is now Israel, Lebanon, and parts of Syria and Jordan. This is a huge deal because it challenges the idea that the shroud was just some medieval forgery created in Europe. I mean, if the materials point to a Middle Eastern origin, that lines up a lot better with the shroud supposedly being Jesus' burial cloth, right? Well, that's what Meacham is claiming. Over the years, there's been all kinds of research and analysis done on the Shroud of Turin. In 1978, a team of American scientists got the rare chance to study it up close and personal for a whole week. They couldn't explain the mysterious image on the cloth, but they did confirm that it came from a real human body. Then, in the late 80s, some carbon dating tests seemed to date the shroud to the Middle Ages. But more recent studies in 2012 and 2015 have suggested that it could be from the time of Jesus after all. And get this, in 2017, a team of Italian forensic experts did a deep dive into the imprint and found evidence that it matches the injuries Jesus suffered during his crucifixion. They even think the cause of death was a heart attack brought on by the trauma. So what are we to make of all this? Well, the debate rages on, but this new evidence about the flax is a pretty big deal. It's making a lot of people rethink things. Could the Shroud of Turin really be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ himself? For now, the search for the truth continues. The Pharaoh's Medallion. There is an Egyptian pharaoh that may have been an alien. The discovery of an ancient medallion could change everything we thought we knew about Egypt's past. You may have heard of Pharaoh Akhenaten, and you definitely have if you've been watching this channel, but how much do you really know about him? We know that he ruled Egypt between 1353 and 1336 BC. Under his leadership, Egypt abandoned its traditional polytheism. Akhenaten introduced a new religion, Atenism, which centered around the worship of one deity, Aten, the sun god. But after Akhenaten's death, things went right back to the way they were before he took the throne. Apparently, people miss their old gods and goddesses too much. But what made him do this in the first place? What gave him the idea to worship one god and make everyone else do it with him? We also know that Akhenaten was pretty bizarre looking, and I'm not talking about funky fashion choices here. What I mean is that Akhenaten didn't look like a normal man. He had strange feminine hips and an elongated skull. He also had a pronounced chin and a nose that stood out in a crowd, if you know what I mean. He had long arms and a protruding tummy. Akhenaten's distinctive physique was definitely raising eyebrows back then. And here's where things get really interesting. Rumor has it that Akhenaten owned a mysterious medallion featuring a flying saucer and even the head of a gray alien. The medallion was supposedly discovered in an Egyptian tomb by a man named Professor Winwood. But that's about all anyone knows about this artifact. It's not clear when it was found or from what tomb it was excavated. Take a look at it for yourself and tell me what you think. Could this be evidence of extraterrestrial involvement in ancient Egypt? And if so, where is this mind-blowing medallion now? Well, unfortunately, it seems to have vanished into thin air, leaving us with more questions than answers. But hey, who doesn't love a good mystery? Some people have taken this medallion as proof that Akhenaten wasn't exactly who he claimed to be. Some even think that this could be evidence that he was an alien himself, or at least part alien, and given his bizarre appearance, it's no wonder why people think that. There is a whole lot of speculation surrounding ancient aliens in Akhenaten, and the debate is as heated as ever. From official stances to wild theories, everyone's got an opinion. What's yours? Let me know in the comments. Tiny worm, giant eyes. Get ready to dive into the bizarre and fascinating world of the Vanadis bristleworm. These little guys are evidence of just how insane evolution can get. They were recently discovered in the Mediterranean Sea, and man, are scientists excited. First, let's talk about how downright strange these marine worms are. They mainly live off the coast of Naples, Italy, a city that is no stranger to weirdness itself. But these worms really take the cake. They belong to a group called Polychaetes, which basically rule the seas with over 10,000 different species. And get this, they have somehow survived 5 mass extinctions. These critters are super resilient and adapt to nearly every environment they are placed in. Now, the most mind-blowing thing about the Vanadis worm is its eyes. I mean, they're massive, 20 times the size of its tiny head. Can you imagine if we had eyes that big? We would look crazy and probably need forklifts to get around. So scientists have been really curious about why these worms evolved such gigantic peepers. It turns out that the Vanadis worm has some seriously impressive eyesight, on par with mice and rats. And that's pretty incredible for a simple little worm with barely any brain at all. Researchers think these big eyes help the worm see in the dark at night when they come out to feed. And they might even be able to detect UV light and bioluminescent signals, things we humans can't see. The scientists think the worms might use this hypervision for some kind of secret communication, maybe related to mating. Imagine a bunch of these little worms flashing each other in the blackness of the deep sea, like some wild underwater nightclub. But the real kicker is that these worm eyes might hold the key to some groundbreaking technological innovations. Researchers are already working on trying to replicate the mechanisms behind the worm's vision, hoping to apply it to things like computer science and artificial intelligence. Their super simple nervous system somehow processes all this visual info like a champ, so cracking that code could be a game changer. I guess you can never underestimate the hidden genius lurking in the most unexpected of creatures. These Vanadis worms are making even the smartest scientists feel like they have a lot more to learn about the natural world. Bronze Age network of communities. Most archaeologists already knew that the biggest structures in the world, prior to the Iron Age, were Central Europe's Bronze Age megaforts. But what they didn't know was that those megaforts were connected together. Yep, in early 2024, archaeologists discovered that 100 massive sites were connected by a previously unknown network. They now believe that these sites were all stitched together, creating one massive and complex society. New satellite and aerial images unveiled the network. According to one of the authors of the study, Barry Malloy, the people living within this network of sites must have numbered into the tens of thousands. The communities living around these Bronze Age megaforts didn't stand alone. They were part of a closely related and codependent society. The discovery of these sites through the use of satellite imagery is a significant development in the field of technology-assisted archaeology. This mirrors the earlier identification of 396 undocumented Roman forts in Syria and Iraq using Cold War-era satellite data. That's right, just under 400 structures were found using satellites. Isn't that amazing? It's also kind of terrifying, right? Can these satellites peek into our homes too? Probably. These findings expand our understanding of ancient societal networks and settlement patterns across the region. By utilizing advanced remote sensing technologies, archaeologists are able to detect subtle landscape features. They can also find buried structures that would be difficult to identify through conventional field surveys. The new sites were all found near the Tisza River, and all of them were within 50 miles of each other. Through excavation, ground surveys, and geophysical prospection, the team concluded that most of the sites were established sometime between 1600 and 1450 BC. They were likely maintained until all of these megaforts were abandoned around 1200 BC. Because the sites were so close together, archaeologists believe that this wasn't a highly contested region between multiple kingdoms. Instead, they think it was a cooperative community that acted as a major hub for the region. Deep sea discovery. During an expedition in early 2024, just this year, off the coast of Chile, deep-sea explorers unearthed over 100 potentially new species, adding to the immense wild diversity of ocean life. Each of the 10 seamounts they explored revealed a unique ecosystem, like uncovering different chapters in a thrilling underwater story. Dr. Seuss himself couldn't dream this stuff up. Picture ancient coral forests, clusters of sea urchins sporting cactus-like spikes, and gardens of glassy sponges clinging to underwater mountain ranges that soar thousands of feet from the ocean floor. This underwater expedition was no ordinary adventure. Using high-tech underwater robots, the research team dove more than 14,000 feet below the surface, collecting mysterious specimens from the deep. And now that they are back on dry land, scientists will study these creatures' body structures and genes. Among the newfound marine life are ghostly white sponges, lobsters with beady eyes and barbed legs, and a whole array of corals, sea urchins, sea stars, and sea lilies. From marine parks to uncharted waters, this expedition proves that there is still so much to explore beneath the ocean. Javier Seyanes, one of the scientists leading the charge, described the trip as hitting the jackpot for sea sponges. They discovered a bounty of marine life where only a few species were previously known. Ancient Kingdom Temple. Phanagoria is an ancient city that's located on the Taman Peninsula in southwestern Russia. This place was buzzing with life in the middle of the 6th century BC. It was founded by Greek settlers right by the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. Something incredible was recently uncovered in the city by archaeologists. Can you guess what it was? I'll give you a clue. Jesus would have prayed here, and others would have gathered here to worship their god. They found a synagogue, one of the oldest synagogues ever discovered. Phanagoria wasn't just your average city. It flourished for more than 1,500 years and became a major hub in the region. It was even one of the important capitals of an ancient kingdom called the Bosporan Kingdom. This empire is sometimes called the Jewel of the Black Sea. The prosperity of the kingdom was mainly based on the export of fish, wheat, and slaves. But even though the Bosporans were basically human traffickers, they still made time to praise God, probably because they had a lot of repenting to do. This ancient synagogue was rectangular, about as big as a decent-sized living room, adorned with beautiful paintings and tiles. Inside, they discovered marble menorahs, tables used for religious ceremonies, and bits of fancy marble columns. Archaeologists found an inscription on a stela dating back to the 5th century AD that directly translates to synagogue in Greek. But earlier discoveries from the city, like marble tablets inscribed with the phrase House of Prayer, dated even further back to between 16 and 51 AD. This indicates that the synagogue in Phanagoria is one of the oldest in the world. And since he was alive around that time, maybe even Jesus himself stopped by at some point to check in with the big guy upstairs. This discovery tells us that Jewish life in Phanagoria was thriving way back in the 1st century AD, with signs of a strong Jewish community. Synagogues have been around since the 3rd century BC, but finding one from the 1st century AD is pretty rare. The Phanagoria synagogue stood proudly for over 500 years until the city met its unfortunate end. In the middle of the 6th century AD, some rowdy barbarian tribes pillaged and devastated Phanagoria, leaving it in shambles. The ancient city, before it was destroyed, served as a melting pot of religions and cultures, with evidence of Jewish, Christian, and other traditions coexisting peacefully. This discovery not only sheds light on ancient religious history, but also shows us how diverse and sophisticated ancient cities like Phanagoria really were. The Blinker Wall. In the depths of the Baltic Sea lies a surprising ancient find, a mysterious underwater wall known as Blinker Wall. It's believed to be Europe's oldest man-made megastructure. This extraordinary discovery challenges what we thought we knew about how Stone Age people hunted. Blinker Wall, which is made up of over 1,300 stones and 300 large boulders arranged on the seabed, is submerged nearly 70 feet underwater in the Bay of Mecklenburg. It dates back around 10,000 years. Researchers think Stone Age hunters built it to corral and guide reindeer, taking advantage of the animal's habit of following straight lines in the landscape. Our ancient ancestors were pretty clever. The wall likely served as a strategic pathway to lead reindeer towards waiting hunters. Talk about a sneaky move. Originally, it was on dry land near a lake where reindeer gathered, showing how early European hunter-gatherers understood their environment. While similar structures exist elsewhere, Blinker Wall's discovery is a big deal for the Baltic Sea region. It sheds light on a new aspect of prehistoric life. The wall was found during a routine sonar mapping in 2021 off the German coast. Blinker Wall's existence proves that sometimes archaeology can surprise us, and it hints at even more amazing finds hidden under the waves. As scientists explore further, we might learn even more about our ancient ancestors and their genius hunting techniques. Maybe they were a bit too good, because after that, a lot of ancient species went extinct.
The Nameless Civilization. One of the biggest discoveries of the last decade has just been made in the jungles of Venezuela. I can't wait to tell you about the amazing pieces of rock art that have been found, belonging to a civilization that nobody knew existed. Finding a new civilization is crazy in 2024. Yet a team of archaeologists in Venezuela did just that. They identified 20 rock art sites in the southeast part of the country within the Canaima National Park. The art goes back thousands of years. There are a lot of examples of rock art throughout the jungles of South America, but the designs here are unique. Jose Miguel Perez Gomez with the Simón Bolívar University said they represent a new culture previously unknown. As for the art itself, it looks like what you would expect ancient rock art to look like. The designs are known as pictograms, red geometric motifs. There are rows of lines, dots, and X's. There are patterns shaped like stars and swirling lines that connect to create mesmerizing designs. It's all very abstract. The ancient art would look right at home in a fancy art exhibit somewhere. Perez Gomez said nobody on the team understands why the ancient people created the art. They haven't been able to translate anything or find meaning in it. The archaeologist said it's almost impossible to get into the minds of people who were living so many thousands of years ago. That being said, the archaeologists do have some educated guesses. They believe the strange drawings had a ritual significance to the ancient people. The depictions could be related to birth, life, disease, the changing of the seasons. What do you think they might mean? All right, now for the info you've been waiting for. The age of the art and the culture that made it. There's only one problem. I don't actually know how old the rock art is. The researchers haven't been able to figure it out, but they did mention that the rock art is fairly similar to other examples that have been found in Brazil from 4,000 years ago. And on top of that, Perez Gomez said the examples of Venezuela could be even older. This could be a civilization more than 5,000 years old, and it couldn't be in a more amazing place. The Canaima National Park is humongous, nearly the size of Belgium. It's home to the legendary Angel Falls, the tallest waterfall in the world. Researchers are starting to think this park could have been ground zero for the development of one of the earliest Amazonian cultures ever. This civilization, which currently doesn't even have a name, may have started here at Angel Falls and then spread to other places using branches of the Amazon River. They could have traveled all the way to Colombia, Brazil, and who knows where else. Sacrifices from far and wide. A scientific team has analyzed skulls recovered from an ancient sacred cenote in Mexico. What they found is going to shock you. The skulls belong to human sacrifices. But hang in there for a minute, because that is not the shocking part. The lead researcher of the project was T. Douglas Price at the University of Wisconsin. He and his team analyzed the tooth enamel from Mayan sacrifices who died 1,000 years ago. The tooth enamel was able to reveal where the sacrifices came from in Mexico. And let's just say they weren't the next-door neighbors. Some of the victims came from thousands of miles away. This seems to suggest the Maya had a complex trading network, and humans were the things being traded. Let me back things up a bit and take you to the cenote where the skulls were found. The cenote is a natural limestone sinkhole that looks kind of like a portal to hell. Its mouth is almost 200 feet wide, located in the ancient jungle city of Chichen Itza. Looking down into the cenote almost gives you a sense of vertigo, like you're standing at the edge of a well without a bottom. The site was initially dredged at the start of the 20th century. Archaeologists brought up amazing artifacts made of jade, gold, and pottery. They also found some weapons and the remains of textiles. But what people mostly focused on were the bones of the over 200 sacrifice victims who had been offered to the Black Pit to appease the gods. At the peak of Maya civilization in the 10th century AD, they were sacrifice happy, especially at Chichen Itza, which had a population of around 50,000. It was one of the biggest cities in the empire. Have you ever wondered why Mexico has so many cenotes? Most of Mexico doesn't. They are primarily found in the Yucatan Peninsula, which is a giant limestone shelf. The whole peninsula is like a block of limestone, which has been perforated like Swiss cheese thanks to rising and falling sea levels over thousands of years. Not all cenotes were sacred to the Maya. Some were used as offering pits, while others were treasured for their delicious fresh water. Out of the 200 skeletal remains found at the cenote in Chichen Itza, about half of them were children. The remainder were mostly male, with only a few female skeletons found. Do you want me to tell you the condition these skeletons were found in? I'm warning you, it is exceptionally brutal. You've been warned. The skeletons had all been horribly injured. The bones also showed evidence of weathering, meaning they had probably been put on display for quite some time after death and before being cast into the waters of the cenote. Some of the skeletons had been ripped apart as if mauled by a great beast. Some had holes in their skulls made by percussive tools, and this means that many of the skulls had probably been displayed on trophy racks. Okay, that's it for the gruesome stuff. The point of the recent study of the tooth enamel was to find where the sacrifices came from. And what scientists learned is that they came from all over, from every corner of the Maya Empire and beyond. Florida ant ambulance. There's only one animal in the world that performs life-saving operations. Human beings are the only ones that perform surgery to save other members of their own species, right? Actually, wait, that's not true. Scientists have just found the second known animal that does the exact same thing. There is now another living creature that has been found to perform surgery, but it's a bug. Ants in Florida have been spotted treating their friends' wounds. The implications of this discovery are huge. Ants are already some of the most sophisticated things on the planet. There are not many creatures that function with the sort of organizational skills as ants, except for maybe bees. Scientists from the University of Würzburg in Germany discovered the species Megaponera analis treating infected wounds with an antimicrobial substance produced in their own glands. That was in 2023, and it was exciting enough on its own. These African ants have their own natural healing juices that they can spit on an infected wound to heal it. That's like if you had polysporin in your saliva and could lick your friend's wound until it was healed. After finding this out, the team of scientists were curious about ants living in thick Florida wilderness. Carpenter ants don't have an antimicrobial substance in their glands, so the team wanted to learn how they took care of wounded members in their colony. What they discovered was even more shocking. These ants are surgeons. The team observed the ants treating other ants' injuries by cleaning the wounds with their mouth, amputating the leg by biting it, and then sending them on their way. Survival rate was between 90 and 95%. Ant amputation is no joke. How long do you think it takes to amputate a leg if you're an ant? It takes a whopping 40 minutes. But anyway, the science behind it is nothing short of miraculous. The ants are able to diagnose a wound by looking at it. They can see if it's infected or sterile, then they treat the wound accordingly. Eric Frank, the leader of the German researchers, said the only medical system that can rival that of the ants is the human medical system. But the ants don't have to pay for theirs. Their amputation is totally free of charge. The oldest pyramids in the world. I'm going to tell you something very surprising. The oldest pyramids in the world are not in Egypt. They are in the Brazilian jungle. They predate their Egyptian counterparts by centuries. In 1996, it was announced that scientists found pyramids from 5,000 years ago on the Atlantic coast of Brazil. Some were found to contain hundreds of human burials. Researchers found stone plaques, carved whales, and other artifacts. If scientists have known about these pyramids since the 1990s, why have they seemingly ignored them? There are some huge differences between the pyramids of ancient Egypt and the pyramids of Brazil. They are both tall, spiky triangles, and they were both used as mortuaries. But that's where the similarities end. The Egyptian pyramids were constructed of solid stone. The ones in Brazil were made from seashells. When archaeologists found the pyramids, they didn't realize what they were. They thought the piles of seashells were ancient garbage dumps. Only after 4 long years of research into what scientists thought were mounds of rubbish did they realize their mistake. These pyramids were initially 160 feet tall, absolutely enormous. In terms of volume, they were far bigger than the earliest pyramids in Egypt. Their bases covered around 37 acres. They may not have been as tall as the Egyptian pyramids, but they were far bulkier. Everything about these pyramids is amazing, but unfortunately, scientists still don't know much about them. They were built around 3000 BC, but almost none of them are left standing. Researchers estimated less than 10% of all the Brazilian pyramids are left, and most of them are so ruined that it's hard to even study them. Locals in Brazil scavenged the raw material from the pyramids and used it to build roads. Imagine if the people of Cairo dismantled the pyramids of Giza to build a highway. That's pretty much what happened in Brazil. One of the few surviving examples of a Brazilian pyramid is one near the town of Jaguaruna. It covers 25 acres of land and still reaches 100 feet high. It's lost about 65 feet of its original height. Scientists can't say for certain, but they think a structure may have been on the top of the pyramid. It might have had a building on it, just like how the pyramids in Mexico have temples at the top. Only the pyramids in Brazil are 3,000 years older than the ones in Central America and Mexico. You probably want to know who is responsible for building these pyramids. According to Professor Edna Morley from the National Heritage Institute in Brazil, it was the indigenous people of Brazil. They were far more sophisticated than anyone has ever given them credit for. In 1996, Edna Morley said the discovery of these pyramids would revolutionize the way scientists looked at ancient Brazilian cultures. But that was 30 years ago, and little more has been done. Most people don't even know these pyramids exist. Did you before now? The Amazonian dinosaur. The Amazon jungle used to be filled with terrifying dinosaurs. One of those terrifying dinosaurs was a behemoth of a lizard, a sauropod so big it could have sat on your house. Out of all the dinosaurs, it might have one of the coolest names. I introduce you now to the Amazonsaurus. Its name means Amazon lizard and had a very long neck, a long tail, and probably stood 40 feet from tip to tip. In 2010, paleontologist Gregory S. Paul estimated the creature to be around 11,000 pounds. Until recently, scientists had never been able to confirm that dinosaurs lived in the Amazon. Prior to 2004, the only proof of dinos in the Amazon was a single tooth. One measly tooth. It wasn't enough to prove definitively that dinos roamed the region. Then, in January of 2004, scientists from the Rio de Janeiro Federal University dropped some major news. They announced the discovery of dinosaur fossils in the jungle. The fossils of Amazonsaurus were excavated from the Itapecuru Formation in Brazil, its bones dating to 125 million years ago. This was a miracle. The high humidity and rapid decay of all organic matter made paleontologists think that dinosaur hunting in the Amazon was a lost cause. And in a way, it still is. Very few dinosaurs have been found in the Amazon since. Did you know it was so hard to find fossils in the jungle? Let me know in the comments. The horse monster of the Philippines. What do you think would be the scariest animal to mix with Slender Man? How about a horse? In the Philippines, there's a terrifying creature of folklore known as the tikbalang. It's as if Slender Man were a shadowy, spindly horse. The creature is tall, lanky, and really bony. It's kind of humanoid in shape, but has the head of a horse and stomps around on its hooves. It's said that the monster lives in the rainforest and high up on the mountains, always hiding from human civilization. The tikbalang is all disjointed looking, with its limbs disproportionately long. When it squats, its knees poke above its head. And while it might seem like a more frightening version of Bigfoot that couldn't possibly be real, many people in rural parts of the Philippine jungle still live in fear of it. What's crazy is how long people have been afraid of this monstrosity. The origin of the tikbalang can be traced back to the very roots of Hinduism and the ancient religion of the Philippines. Thousands of years ago in the Philippines, people believed in animalism. What this means is that everything to them had a consciousness, every single aspect of nature. They were connected to the stones, the seas, the trees, and especially the animals. Everything in animalism has power. rude to the grains of sand between your toes. It was somewhere during the transition from pagan-like animalism to adopting Hinduism that the Tikbalang became part mythical monster and part deity. Hinduism showed up around 200 AD. During this cultural shift, Tikbalang may have been born from the Hindu god Hayagriva, who was Vishnu's horse-headed avatar. Hayagriva has been worshipped since 2000 BC. In the 16th century, Spanish chronicler Father Juan de Plasencia documented indigenous beliefs in the Philippines. He said the indigenous people feared and revered the Tikbalang. He described it as a ghost, a goblin, or a devil. The father also claimed that people would make pacts with the monster. So what's the reality here? Is there a terrifying horse demon in the jungles of the Philippines or not? Unfortunately, there is as much proof that the Tikbalang exists as there is to support the existence of the Loch Ness Monster. Lots of people claim that they have encountered the beast, but there isn't a single piece of physical evidence to prove it. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. The creation of the Maya people. The creation of the Maya people can be traced to the jungles of Guatemala. There is an ancient text that describes exactly how the Maya people came into being. It's a twist on the old Adam and Eve story, involving a pair of twins rather than a romantic couple. You're going to want to hear this. The text I'm talking about is the Popol Vuh. It pains me to say it, but the Popol Vuh no longer exists in its original form. The oldest surviving copy is an account written by a Spaniard in 1701. In 1701, a Dominican priest named Francisco Jimenez arrived in the Quiche territory of Guatemala. He transcribed and translated the Popol Vuh, the traditional creation myth that has been passed down in the Quiche society for centuries. The Quiche were a group of people you don't hear much about these days. They were a faction of the Maya living in Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador, and parts of Mexico. They had their own language and their own states within the Maya Empire. It was kind of like how French people have their own province and language in the country of Canada. So Francisco compiled the myths of the Popol Vuh, and that was that. Over the next 240 years, the manuscript bounced around from one institution to another. It arrived in Guatemala City, somehow ended up in France, and was rediscovered at the Newberry Library in Chicago in 1941. The Popol Vuh tells the story of Punapu and Xbalanque. They were heroic twins who defeated the deathbores of the underworld and rose to heaven to become the sun and the moon. Through their actions in the underworld, the twins paved the way for human beings to live on Earth. A city lost for 1,000 years. In a remote part of the Honduran rainforest lies the legendary White City. It's deep in the jungle, known in the ancient myths as La Ciudad Blanca. Its name makes you think of tall white pillars of stone, crumbling temples, and vines hanging over epic statues. If legend is to be believed, the city was built 4,000 years ago by an unknown civilization who worshipped a monkey god. In 2015, a team of scientists went in search of this legendary city. Up until then, most people didn't even think it was real. Even archaeologists were suspicious, treating the White City like El Dorado or the Lost City of Z. Finding it did not seem like a possibility. Archaeologists thought it was hopeless, and then they found it. The scientific community had their collective jaw on the floor. In La Mosquitia region of the country, structures were found swallowed by the jungle that had been that way for over 1,000 years. This was physical proof. The actual city itself. The White City was so heavily encumbered by vegetation that archaeologists didn't even realize they were standing in the middle of it. I will say this. It's no surprise that it took so long to find the lost city. La Mosquitia is 1,300 square miles of pristine rainforest. It is one of the most biologically diverse places in Central America. It's considered one of the last strongholds of unspoiled wildlife on the planet, even though it's currently threatened by illegal logging and wildlife traffickers. There was one other person who may have been in the city. In the 1940s, American explorer Theodore Mord returned from an expedition to La Mosquitia. According to National Geographic, he claimed to have found thousands of artifacts and ruins of a megalithic city. Inside the city was an enormous statue of a monkey god. Nobody knows if the city Theodore found and the city uncovered in 2015 are the same. There could be multiple cities hidden in La Mosquitia. It's hard enough to focus on one. The leader of the 2015 expedition was Doug Elkins. He learned of the legend of the White City in the 1990s and has been plotting to find it ever since. In 2012, Doug was able to use LiDAR technology to scan the jungle from a survey plane. He used laser pulses to create a 3D map of the ground. The map revealed hidden shapes lurking down below the canopy. So Doug put together an expedition. As they marched through the rainforest, hardly able to see more than a few feet in front of them because of the trees, signs of life started to appear. First, there was a boulder with a petroglyph on it, a man peeking out from the foliage. It was clearly old and worn. As they kept going, they kept finding more evidence of a lost civilization. They found mounds, the remains of plazas, and vessels decorated with images of vultures. They even found a pyramid. It was like a scene right from Indiana Jones. A pyramid in the impossibly thick jungle. Animalistic stone sculptures buried around its base. One of the team members, Oscar Castro, was able to date the objects to roughly 1000 AD. The statues buried around the pyramid may have been part of a shamanistic religion. Professor of anthropology Christopher Fisher suggested they were representations of a shaman's spiritual state during ritual transformation. There were so many artifacts in the ruins, there were too many to count. It was definitely too many to bring out of the jungle. But was this truly the fabled city of the monkey god? Doug said he doesn't know. He believes the entire jungle used to be urbanized. The city he and his team found is probably only one piece of a much larger puzzle. All of Honduras may have been densely populated by a thriving civilization, one that was comparable to ancient Greece or Rome. What I want to know is where they went. It seems like it should be such an obvious question, yet scientists don't have any answers. 1,000 years ago, everyone seems to have picked up and gone. They abandoned the entire region, leaving it to be swallowed by the hungry jungle. Any theories as to what happened? Rewriting history. History is being rewritten in the Amazon rainforest right now. Archaeologists are studying a series of ditches that they say have been around since before the jungle existed. These ditches, which were presumably made by human hands, predate the jungle itself. This is the kind of news you just don't expect to hear, ever. Scientists are struggling to make sense of human history now that they know how long people have been living in the Amazon. The ditches have been found mostly in Bolivia and Brazil, and nobody knows what they were for. Some of the ditches are square, looking like the foundations of towers or other square structures. Other ditches are circular, maybe like deep moats that may have surrounded small settlements. Archaeologists have guessed that maybe the ditches were used for drainage, or maybe for defensive purposes. They could have even been religious in nature. There's no single solution yet, but the really intriguing part is their age. When exactly did prehistoric people start changing the Amazonian landscape? In the 1980s, archaeologists didn't have a very good understanding of civilizations in South America. They assumed indigenous people lived in the Amazon in the same way wild animals do. Scientists assumed that they lived off the land without making changes to the landscape. They never built cities, farmed, or did anything like that. It was believed the Amazonian tribes lived in small villages and were one with nature. But that wasn't the case at all. In the 1980s came mass deforestation. Over the last 40 years, as more and more of the jungle has been destroyed, more ancient ruins have been found. Earthworks and ditches have been spotted that are more than 16 feet deep. It's now become clear to scientists that people in the Amazon did change their environment. They had likely built farms and cities, and they were doing it before the jungle had fully evolved. About 2,000 years ago was when the Amazon jungle, as you and I know it today, began to take shape. Something changed that caused the previous drought-resistant trees to be replaced by evergreens. The Amazon wasn't a desert, but it wasn't the thick jungle of today. The people who built these earthworks did so before the jungle swallowed them up. They may have been literally eaten by the rise of the Amazon. A whole human society gobbled up by nature. Raised by jungle monkeys. Marina Chapman is the real-world version of Tarzan. She spent her youth being raised by monkeys in the jungle. She doesn't quite know how old she is, perhaps in her 70s. The tale of her life is so unbelievable that a decade ago, when she wrote a book about it, mainstream publishers wouldn't touch it. They didn't believe that Marina had really been raised by monkeys. Marina Chapman lived for roughly 5 years in the Colombian jungle without a single human person to talk to. She had to fend for herself, surviving on nothing but berries, roots, and the occasional banana dropped by a monkey high above her head. She slept in the holes in trees like a raccoon. She scurried about on all fours like a dog. By the time Marina was rescued by hunters, she'd forgotten how to speak. Being rescued was where Marina's horror story began. She would soon wish that she was still in the jungle. After Marina was taken from the forest, she was sold into a brothel in the city of Cucuta, where she lived on the street. Then she was enslaved by a family of cartel members. Only through sheer luck did she get saved and sent to England, where she was living in Bradford, Yorkshire 10 years ago while writing her book. For a woman raised by monkeys, Marina ended up with a pretty normal life. She lived in Yorkshire for 30 years, married a retired scientist named John, and had 2 daughters. One of her daughters became a musician, and the other one worked for a pregnancy crisis center. Quite a way to go from the Colombian rainforest. According to Marina, her first memory was of right before her 5th birthday. She remembered playing near her home when 2 strangers came up behind her and kidnapped her. Marina's next memory was of being in the jungle. She had been kidnapped and then dropped off in the middle of nowhere for no apparent reason. Marina started walking, but clearly went in the wrong direction. She walked and walked until stumbling upon a family of monkeys. And that was when she stopped walking and settled in for a very long stay. The monkeys befriended her. They taught Marina which food was good to eat, which water was good to drink, and which trees were good for lounging. She ended up doing everything with the monkeys. They adopted her into their family. Marina even learned to make the same monkey noises as them to communicate. Marina's family is convinced her story is true, but what are your thoughts? Could a person really go from being raised by monkeys to having such a normal life? Or the difficult life that she went through after? Would you survive being lost in the jungle at the age of 5? Let me know in the comments. The gold airplanes from Colombia. There was an ancient civilization in Colombia that may have had access to aerial technology. If they didn't have access to airplanes, there's a good chance they saw them flying in the skies above their jungle. There are even artifacts to back this up. The Quimbaya civilization appeared in Colombia's Antiochian region about 2,500 years ago. Their society continued to prosper for the next millennium, with the people vanishing into obscurity around 600 AD. The Quimbaya are known today for their excellent goldsmithing works, which have been found in the ruins of their civilization. From the sheer number of golden artifacts found in Colombia, archaeologists are confident that the Quimbayan craftsmen had a very high level of technical sophistication. They were almost too sophisticated. One of the best collections of Quimbaya gold treasure was discovered in 1890. Over 400 items were found, including crowns, musical instruments, mysterious golden figures, ceremonial vessels, and pendants. It wasn't archaeologists who found the treasure, but grave robbers. Grave robbers funded by the President of the Republic, Carlos Holguín. He had the looted grave goods sent as a gift to the Queen Governor of Spain. Out of all the Quimbaya artifacts that have been found, the airplanes are the most mysterious. Some call them the Quimbaya jets. They have stirred a major amount of controversy because they look exactly like little airplanes. You've probably seen them mentioned on the show Ancient Aliens on the History Channel. Many people believe them to be depictions of flying vehicles. The Quimbaya probably didn't build jets. If they had access to technology for building fighter jets, archaeologists would have found more than gold trinkets and decorated pottery. But what if they saw jets in the sky? What if they witnessed visitors from another planet in the atmosphere? It could be that the Quimbaya recreated what they saw in the sky in gold miniature. It's a possibility, although it's one that mainstream scientists probably don't want to talk about. Most archaeologists have dismissed the notion altogether. They say the Quimbaya jets aren't airplanes, but frogs or insects that happen to look a little like planes. What do you think they are? Let me know in the comments below.
The Old Egyptian Chronicle. Forget everything you thought you knew about ancient Egypt. According to a jaw-dropping document called the Old Egyptian Chronicle, Egyptian civilization stretches back an astonishing 36,000 years. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where is the proof? Well, the truth is the original chronicle is mysteriously lost, but fear not, history buffs. A brilliant scholar named George Syncellus stumbled upon a copy centuries ago and used it to create a groundbreaking work called the Book of Sothis. This chronicle isn't your average history lesson. It is a mind-bending list of 30 dynasties ruling over 113 generations, spanning a staggering 36,525 years. Wait, what? These weren't your typical kings and queens. We are talking about beings who lived for thousands of years. The first dynasty, the Arites, were led by a sun god, Helios, who held onto power for a whopping 30,000 years. Talk about a long reign. Then came the sun god's children, who still enjoyed impressive lifespans, ruling for a combined 3,984 years. After that, things started to get a bit more human, with 8 demigods ruling for a mere 217 years. It's a strange story. An almighty being arrives on Earth, rules for eternity, has some kids, or maybe some clones, who knows, and their lifespans gradually shorten with each generation. This might remind you of the Sumerian king list, which has a somewhat similar story. After the Arites, the chronicle then introduces the Mesrates, descendants of these demigods who ruled for a more modest 443 years. Finally, we get to our familiar friends, the Egyptians. Dynasty after dynasty of them ruled the Nile, with each lasting around 100 to 200 years, much more in line with what we're used to. The last dynasty listed is the Tanites, which might refer to the ancient city of Tanis, but that's just speculation. Could this list be real? This sounds like pure fantasy, but could it be true? Could ancient Egypt have been ruled by gods long before humans ever appeared on the scene? Or is this a blend of mythology and history together? What do you think? Let me know your theories in the comments. The Anunnaki of the Amazon. While the Anunnaki are more closely associated with Mesopotamia and the Middle East, did you know they used to live in the Amazon jungles of Brazil as well? Each year, the ancient Kayapo tribe of the Brazilian jungle commemorates the arrival of a strange being who once resided in the Amazon. They call this being Bep Kororoti. Others call it an Anunnaki. According to the legend, Bep Kororoti came down from the Pukatoti Mountains and drew the tribes to him. Everyone was fascinated by the mystical stranger because he was wise and had skin that sparkled like diamonds. He didn't look anything like the locals. Bep Kororoti taught the natives things they had never known existed. He bestowed incredible knowledge onto them that helped the tribes advance their civilization. This seems like the Anunnaki agenda to a T. That's exactly what the ancient aliens did. They touched down somewhere in the world, seduced a local population of indigenous humans, and taught them cosmic wisdom and technological secrets. Astronaut theorist Eric von Daniken wrote about Bep Kororoti in his book on ancient aliens called Gods from Outer Space. There are many other experts besides Eric who know the tale and understand that the Amazonians were approached by an alien. It even wore a spacesuit. The folklore of the Kayapo tribe says that Bep Kororoti appeared dressed in a wicker suit. Ancient astronaut theorists believe they only said wicker because they had never seen a spacesuit before, but that you and I today would have undoubtedly recognized the being's suit as being something worn by an astronaut. That's a lot of assumptions, but okay. Every year when the Kayapo tribe celebrates the ancient meeting, they choose one person to dress like the Anunnaki visitor and dance around. They wear a bulky suit made of wicker that is seriously reminiscent of our modern astronauts who walked on the moon. Let's keep going with the Amazonian mythology. The Kayapo supposedly lived with this being, the Anunnaki, for many years until one day it erupted in a fit of insanity. The being screamed and yelled, acting hysterical. It then ran away, and minutes later there was a massive explosion. The being escaped into the heavens, vanishing amid fiery clouds of smoke and thunder. This comes straight from the Kayapo. In 1952, ethnologist João Americo Perez questioned the elders of an Amazonian village and recorded the tale of Bep Kororoti. The elders said that the soil was shaken by the explosion so fiercely that the roots of plants jumped from the earth and part of the forest vanished. It sounds to some people that Bep Kororoti departed in a hurry inside a spaceship. There's no way of telling how far back this story goes. When did the Amazonians meet their first Anunnaki? Did they appear to the people of the jungle at the same time they were in Egypt or in Sumer? Who knows? And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time. I want to give a big thank you to Emily Alagonero and Richard Razzo for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. Was Jesus an alien? Jesus Christ of Nazareth was an alien. An archaeological discovery at a chapel in Scotland provided shocking DNA evidence the Christian Messiah was an unknown species of creature from another world. What I'm about to tell you has not been verified by any mainstream source. You won't find this information in a peer-reviewed study published in a scientific journal, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. A joint team of Israeli and US scientists searched from Israel across Western Europe for holy relics. They didn't quite find anything of note until they arrived at Roslin Chapel in Scotland. There, they found the cross of Calvary, said to be the very cross upon which Jesus Christ was crucified. That is an amazing discovery if it's true. They didn't just find a sliver of the true cross. Archaeologists said they found the whole thing. The whole cross was hidden underneath the chapel, presumably put there by the Templars more than 700 years ago. When scientists started analyzing the cross, they found trace amounts of blood. It was enough blood to conduct a full DNA analysis. The results of the analysis showed something that shouldn't even be real. It shouldn't be physically possible. The DNA recovered from the blood on the cross was not the standard double helix DNA of modern human beings. The blood was triple helix DNA, one whole extra helix. The DNA belonged to a being which scientists have named Homo superioris. It's very similar to ordinary Homo sapiens with one big difference. These human-like creatures have paranormal abilities. They can levitate and heal very quickly, which is a little suspicious because wasn't Christ known for his healing miracles and walking on water? Homo superioris also have telekinetic abilities and telepathic abilities. This might be the most radical theory about the origin of Christ ever. And because the information isn't published in any big scientific journals, I can't confirm that any of it is true. I don't know if the true cross was found in one piece and is currently hidden somewhere. The theory goes on to state that Christ belonged to a race of superior humanoids dwelling in secret on Earth. After he was crucified, he slipped away using his powers and never appeared again. He had tried to preach a message of peace to the humans and was killed for it, and so the whole species remains in hiding to this day. What do you think? Could there really be a hidden race of superhumans living among us? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The oldest mummies in the world. History textbooks may need to be rewritten once again. Archaeologists may have just found the oldest mummies in the world, and they are not where you would expect them to be. You can guess all you want, but I don't think you'll get it, even if you have seen a lot of my videos. You definitely know about Egyptian mummies already. You may even be familiar with the ancient mummies discovered in South America. Up until now, the oldest mummies in the world were the Chinchorro mummies of Chile, dated at 7,000 years old. But they've just lost their spot. Human remains found in Portugal are on the cusp of being confirmed as the oldest mummies ever. They are a staggering 8,000 years old. They point to a mysterious civilization obsessed with mummification almost a full 4,000 years before the Egyptians. This is groundbreaking news. It's come as a big shock to historians and archaeologists around the world. Mummification seems to have begun in Portugal's Sado Valley, of all places. Researchers use a new method called archaeothanatology to confirm their findings. The forensic evidence was confirmed at a facility at Texas State University. It turns out this prehistoric culture had a very specific way of mummifying their dead friends. I have to warn you, it's a little ghoulish. They buried the dead with their knees bent and pressed tightly against their chest. When the corpse was put in the ground, they were bound tightly with rope, and as their body gradually dehydrated and shrank, it was dug up and the ropes were tightened. This process took a long time and a lot of effort. By continuously tightening the ropes as the dead person shriveled, they were compressed into a sort of mummified ball of bones. Tests showed that the flesh didn't decay after the burial. These ancient people preserved their dead perfectly. They did just as well of a job as Egyptian embalmers, using all their alchemical solutions and fancy bandages. But how? Or maybe the better question is, why? How old is this custom? Did it start in Portugal and then make its way to Egypt? What did these people believe in? We'll just have to wait and see. As more information comes out, I'll keep you posted. The civilization at the bottom of a lake. Imagine this. Scuba divers exploring a lost city beneath a serene lake in China. They weren't expecting to find an ancient pyramid, let alone one that might be older than the Egyptian pyramids. Let's dive deeper into this incredible archaeological discovery and try to unravel the secrets of the sunken Chinese pyramid. On June 13, 2006, archaeologists diving in Fuxian Lake stumbled upon something incredible. While searching for the ruins of Yuyuan, a city that vanished centuries ago, they discovered a pyramid, along with bizarre architectural structures and carvings unlike anything they'd ever seen. The carvings are truly baffling. Some depict strange, otherworldly beings with flat faces and spiky teeth, almost like demons. Even more perplexing, scientists believe they have deciphered binary code etched into the stone blocks. A computer language on an ancient underwater pyramid? It's enough to make your head spin. The mystery deepens when we consider the age of this underwater marvel. Scientists estimate it could be at least 1,800 years old, but some believe it's far older, potentially predating even the iconic pyramids of Egypt. So here's the million-dollar question. Who built this incredible underwater pyramid, and why is it submerged beneath the lake? How old do you think this sunken pyramid might be? Could it be evidence of a lost civilization more advanced than we ever imagined? Or perhaps a remnant of an extraterrestrial presence on Earth? This stone circle defies explanation. There are a lot of ancient stone circles out there, but this one is pretty impressive. The sheer size of this Stone Age monument just discovered in Poland is beyond imagination. Oh, and the ancient site isn't just 3 times bigger than Stonehenge, it is also much older. You're going to lose it when I tell you how the site was found. In 2015, a paraglider was flying through the air above northwest Poland when they looked down and saw some strange rings in a field. Paragliding would be cool on its own, but to realize you're paragliding over such a prehistoric landscape would be amazing. The rings looked kind of like crop circles. The paraglider reported what they saw to local archaeologists. In 2016, a researcher scrutinized satellite images on Google Earth. Sure enough, there were massive rings in the empty field like forgotten crop circles. 3 years later, experts from several universities in Poland started excavating. They knew that the circles would become something known as a roundel, but they didn't know how big it was going to be. Roundels are all over Poland, Germany, and the Czech Republic. Scientists have cataloged about 130 of them over the years, but there were likely way more during prehistory. Each roundel is a mystery because nobody knows what they were used for. Some say they served a ritualistic purpose. Others claim the roundels functioned as astronomical calendars, like Stone Age community clocks. While roundels are considered one of the greatest Stone Age mysteries of Europe, none of them ever gained much fame. They typically aren't very big, and so you don't hear people talking about them very much. That all changes today. The new roundel in Poland is being hailed as one of the most impressive prehistoric structures found anywhere in the world. But who built it? I don't know. I wish we could have seen this thing in its heyday because it was spectacular. Archaeologists identified a central area surrounded by 3 monumental gates. The monument was enclosed by 4 ditches, each one larger and deeper than the last. Picture Stonehenge but 3 times bigger and protected by moats. The project leader said that discovering the roundel is significant from both a historical and archaeological standpoint. He went as far as to call it sensational. Researchers believe it's at least 7,000 years old, making it 2,000 years older than Stonehenge. Could it have been built by the Druids of ancient England or another, even older culture? No one has any definitive answers, but I would like to show you this artist's mock-up of what the roundel may have looked like thanks to Anasazi. It doesn't look as impressive as Stonehenge in the picture, but you can still see this was an immense gathering place. We just don't know what they were gathering here for. The Giants of Prehistory confirmed. Looks like our family history just got a whole lot more interesting. Fossils in China have revealed the existence of prehistoric giants and what might just be the most important discovery of the century. These aren't the Nephilim of the Bible, but they might be their ancestors, in the same way Australopithecus is our ancestor. Two scientists with a background in hominin fossils identified a new human ancestor. This stranger appeared on our family tree about 300,000 years ago. The scientists named the new species Homo juluensis. In Chinese, Julu means huge head. It's a reference to the giants' massive proportions. Their skulls were absolutely huge, way bigger than ours. Seriously, you could fit a small melon in there. The researchers didn't find anything new. The bones of this ancient specimen were recovered initially in the 1970s in China's northern region, but no one knew who the bones belonged to, so they were kept in a drawer for years for safekeeping. Then came Christopher Bay from the University of Hawaii and Xiu-Ji Wu from the Chinese Academy of Sciences. They dusted off the bones and started testing them. The pair had the fossils of 16 individuals to analyze, along with some stone tools and animal bones. The first thing was to date the specimens. They turned out to be roughly 200,000 years old, from the peak of the Ice Age, aka the last glacial maximum. This was a time when many archaic forms of humans wandered the world. There were different species living in Japan, Korea, and China, just to name a few. Our ancestors bred with one another so frequently that the fossil record is very confusing. Although there were many different human species, they didn't seem to have trouble making babies with each other. This resulted in the creation of hybrids and a lot of baffling fossils. What struck the researchers about the fossils they were testing was their size. The skulls measured up to 109 cubic inches. Now let's compare that to our own brains. The average Homo sapiens, yes, I'm looking at you, kid, has a skull size of 81 cubic inches. When talking such small measurements, a difference of 30 is massive. Homo juluensis, aka huge head humans, really did have huge heads. Even our Neanderthal cousins only had an average skull volume of 88 cubic inches, a bit bigger than our own, but still dwarfed by Homo juluensis. They must have had gargantuan brains. There is no doubt in the researchers' minds that they have uncovered a forgotten species on the human family tree, but they aren't looking at the full picture. Ancient alien enthusiasts and others are very excited that these prehistoric giants could have become the Nephilim of the antediluvian pre-flood world. Maybe humans and giants evolved next to each other, like tigers and cheetahs in Africa. Just two apex predators struggling for dominance. Is it that crazy of an idea? Let's not forget what ancient legends tell us about giants. In the pre-flood world, giants ruled everything. The Bible tells us that giants just about inherited the earth. They were only brought to ruin by the flood. Other old legends from North America to China talk of small groups of giants living in the post-flood world. These more recent giants kept to themselves, lived in caves, and generally avoided people. They knew their time was up. Amazingly, Chris and Wu have speculated that Homo juluensis lived in small groups and maintained a much smaller population than humans. Regular-sized humans, that is. This could explain why their fossils have never been found before. The experts also suggest that the giants may have gone extinct 120,000 years ago. Could that be the date of the real flood? Plus, Chris said it's possible some of their big-headed DNA survived inside of us. It could be inside of you right now, because the giants may have interbred with humans. Now, this is something the Bible suggests the Nephilim did before the flood. The Nephilim likely mixed with normal humans. Can you see the pieces falling into place here? There is, of course, still a lot more work to be done. Researchers think there could be other species of oversized humans that haven't been found yet. This is only the beginning of what might be a revolution in human history. Benjamin Franklin and the Antediluvian World. Did you know that Benjamin Franklin was a bit of an oracle? In 1780, Benjamin wrote a letter to the English philosopher Joseph Priestley with a bizarre prediction for the future. His prediction was based on the antediluvian world of the past. Benjamin Franklin was very optimistic about humanity. At the end of the 18th century, he was aware of how fast science was progressing. He began his letter to Joseph saying that he was sad to be born so soon. He would not be alive to see the true scientific potential of humanity. Benjamin Franklin then stated that within 1,000 years, human beings would increase their life expectancy tenfold. He was certain that people would be able to live for 10 full centuries, a full 1,000 years. Would you even want to live that long? This wasn't a number he pulled out of a hat. Benjamin's proposal for the future longevity of humans came from the Bible. He was inspired by the supposed longevity enjoyed by biblical patriarchs in the Old Testament. Noah, Jared, Seth, Adam, they all had one thing in common. They lived for longer than 900 years. In the Bible, the term antediluvian refers to the time before the flood. The Bible says that before God flooded the world to get rid of those pesky giants, human beings lived for a crazy long time. Enhanced lifespans aren't something that only appear in the Bible. As you learned before, the Egyptians may have been descendants of people who lived for thousands of years. The Old Egyptian Chronicle is just like the king list of the Sumerians, which details the same thing. The Sumerian king list is a catalog of Mesopotamian kings who lived in excess of 1,000 years each. Humans have come up with a lot of cool inventions since Benjamin Franklin's day, but we haven't quite cracked immortality yet. Who knows? Maybe one day we will live like Adam and Noah. We need to reclaim whatever lost technology allowed ancient people to live so long. The truth behind the Anunnaki. Aliens, gods, kings, genetic experiments, or ancient myths. What is the truth of the Anunnaki? In the earliest writings of the Sumerians 5,000 years ago, the Anunnaki are gods. They were not that different from the gods of Olympus. The Anunnaki were born from the union between the ultimate god of the heavens, An, and the goddess of the earth, Ki. This was almost identical to the gods of Olympus being born from Kronos and Gaia. According to the Sumerians, the primary function of the Anunnaki was to dictate the fate of humanity. They weren't on Earth to prosper, mine for gold, or play games. Their prime directive was to guide the humans into a future of prosperity. Here's a secret. The word Anunnaki can be translated as princely seed. The Anunnaki were not the supreme creators. They were the seeds of the supreme creator. Historians have been trying to figure out how long the Anunnaki were worshipped, but they keep hitting a dead end. Something a lot of people don't realize is that the Anunnaki were likely not worshipped as a pantheon until much later in Sumerian history. The first use of the term Anunnaki is in an inscription from 2144 BC, written during the 3rd dynasty of Ur, under the leadership of King Gudea. For 1,000 years before that, the Anunnaki were not a complete group. There were more than 50 Anunnaki, each one its own unique divinity. Each one was usually associated with a specific city and even a specific animal. Many of the Anunnaki were depicted as anthropomorphic beings. Some were associated with their own star or planet. The goddess Inanna was closely associated with Venus, while Utu was connected with the sun. Around 2100, the various gods ruling over the cities of Mesopotamia started to be grouped under one umbrella, the Anunnaki. But what does this mean? Were they ancient aliens who visited planets and created human beings to be their slaves? That is a popular theory, but there isn't any description like that in the Sumerian records. It might be true, I don't know. I'm just telling you that the Sumerians never said such a thing. British conspiracy theorist David Icke claimed the Anunnaki were reptilian overlords who enslaved humanity. David even said that the Aryan race, popularized by the Nazis, descended from the Anunnaki, and apparently the world is still controlled by them today. Mainstream scholars associate the Anunnaki with the gods of ancient Greece. There are a lot of similarities between them, too many to ignore. Each Anunnaki god was the master of a certain element, just like the Olympians. There was Enlil, god of the air, Enki, god of water, and Ninhursag, goddess of the mountain. There's one more theory I need to share with you. Since each Mesopotamian city seemed to have its own Anunnaki or god, maybe the Anunnaki were indeed alien rulers. Maybe that's why every city had one. And maybe after 4000 BC, the Anunnaki were gone, and that was why they got grouped into one pantheon of gods. They had ruled cities, and then they left to go back to their planet. This Peruvian pyramid is crazy. A pyramid in Peru is yet another connection to the world of ancient aliens. When archaeologists discovered this pyramid recently, they were shocked for two reasons. First, the pyramid is far older than it has any right to be, and second, it holds a dark and violent secret. I take you now to the Sechin Archaeological Project, a site in Peru's northern province of Casma. The site is at least 5,000 years old, maybe even a little older. It was the center of a mysterious civilization known only as the Sechin. Keep in mind that Sechin wasn't what they called themselves, it's just a name given to them by modern archaeologists. We have no clue what they used to call themselves. In fact, this is true for most ancient civilizations. It's something you should always keep in mind. Take the Minoans, for example. Nobody knows what they called themselves. They were only named the Minoans by an archaeologist who connected them to King Minos from the old Greek legends. Anyway, getting back on track, little is known about the Sechin civilization. But this pyramid they built can give us clues. Experts believe it could be the first monumental building anywhere in the Americas. The Sechin may have even been the first known civilization to prosper in Peru's Andes Mountains. They were around at least 4,500 years before the Inca Empire. Let that sink in for a second. There was as much time between the Inca and the Sechin as there is between us and Pharaoh Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid. Archaeologists had to dig very deep to find the structure. They excavated about 18 feet beneath the surface of the ancient site. Even though the pyramid was clearly huge, it still managed to get completely buried. The design was found to be highly unusual as well. The pyramid was built from massive slabs of stone stacked into stairs. It's similar to a step pyramid, like a Mesopotamian ziggurat, but has its own local style. It's difficult to put into words how peculiar, but also familiar, the Peruvian pyramid is. Okay, but what was it for? What was that dark secret I mentioned earlier? At first, archaeologists believed that the pyramid was the seat of a local government. They thought maybe it was like a giant throne to a king or a queen. However, the more they investigated, the more things took a sinister turn. Archaeologist Monica Suarez, who coordinated the excavation, said the pyramid likely served a ceremonial purpose. It resembles buildings used for blood sacrifices in other parts of the Americas. There are two skulls on the pyramid, one belonging to an adult and the other to a child. The other clues are even more brutal. For example, a dismembered skeleton. The skeleton belonged to somebody who had his or her limbs removed while they were still alive. I can't begin to imagine the horror of being literally ripped apart. What kind of bloody rituals were these people conducting? Archaeologists think the sacrifices could have taken place at the top of the pyramid, but the investigation is still ongoing. At this point, you might be wondering what dismembered skeletons and a buried pyramid have to do with ancient aliens. It all comes down to coincidence. You know that pyramids are all over the world, and we've established that there are pyramids that predate those in Egypt. It is possible that every known pyramid is connected, each one related to an original civilization. This origin culture might even predate the Ice Age. People may have been building pyramids for tens of thousands of years, inspired by the Anunnaki or other extraterrestrial visitors. What are your thoughts on civilizations that predate our own? I want to know what you think, so be sure to leave a comment and remember to subscribe if you haven't already.